In my past life, my mother adopted the child of her unrequited love. She drained me dry to fund their education. They achieved fame and success, and my mother was hailed as a saint, while I, worn down by overwork, fell gravely ill. I begged them to save me, but my mother held me back. You don't strive to better yourself, you just know how to ask for money. Have you no shame? Then, with a face full of loving kindness, she said to them, I took you in, and I expect nothing in return. In the end, I succumbed to my illness and died, while my mother and them became a true family. When I opened my eyes again, my mother was pulling me down to kneel. Swear to me, she said, that you will take care of your younger brother and sister until they're grown. 1. Cynthia, tell us, is it you who wants a younger brother and sister? Under my grandmother's fiery glare, my mother looked at me with a pleading expression. My father passed away early, leaving only a few acres of farmland, just enough to keep my mother and me from starving. How could we possibly afford to feed 2 more mouths like Seth and Giselle? My grandmother was the first to object, saying the family was too poor and that my mother should just focus on raising me. But my mother, using the argument that I would need siblings to rely on in the future, brainwashed me day and night. Thus, I was tricked into agreeing to let Seth and Giselle into our home. Speak up, Cynthia. My mom was getting impatient, and she pinched my arm even harder. Seth and Giselle's father was my mother's unattainable love, but unfortunately, he didn't fancy my mother. He married Seth's beautiful mother, which forced my mother to marry my father. Yet even after getting married, she never forgot her first love. Upon hearing that Seth's father was chased to death by a wild boar and his mother ran away, she immediately stepped forward to offer to adopt them. The Shin family relatives were overjoyed, times were hard, and everyone was afraid the kids would become a burden on their own households. Seeing a willing sucker volunteer to take them in, they immediately had my mother sign the papers and press her fingerprint. I shivered and clutched my arm, crying out in pain, Mom, please don't pinch me, I'll do whatever you say. You told me you and Uncle Shin grew up together, so his child is like your own. I'll listen to you. I want a little brother or sister. My mother froze, her previously confident smile now fixed and rigid on her face. Cynthia, what are you talking about? My mother shrieked. In her previous life, she never publicly had any connection with Seth's father. The villagers all thought she was acting out of great compassion to adopt orphans. Even after Seth and Giselle got into college, the media came to interview this kind-hearted rural woman who asked for nothing in return. Looking back now, that supposedly noble act of adoption doesn't seem so pure anymore. Her face flushed red as she stammered over and over, It wasn't me, I didn't do it, you're lying. It wasn't until her grandmother's hand, large as a palm leaf fan, was about to strike her face that she finally snapped out of it. With a loud cry, she pulled Seth and Giselle down to their knees too. Mom, please be kind and generous. Seth and Giselle have already lost their parents. If no one takes care of them, how will these 2 children survive? My mom was banging her head on the floor, and my grandma was absolutely furious. Clearly, Seth and his sister have relatives, and at the very least, they could report to the police to find their birth mother. How could they not survive? But my mom was convinced they'd be bullied. Ever since the day their white moonlight died, she's been sighing nonstop, heartbroken over those 2 kids being all alone in the world. You say you want to raise them. With what? My grandmother, suppressing her anger, pointed at the silent Seth siblings and demanded an answer. My mother stammered, unable to get a word out. Back then, she insisted the family was short on money and made my father go work in an illegal coal mine. The shaft collapsed, and he was buried inside. My grandmother gathered a bunch of relatives and staged a 3-day blockade before they finally received a compensation payout. I'd only given the money to my mother a few days before, and she'd already lost it. She held me, sobbing her heart out, saying she was terrified seeing me so sick and that she'd lost the money on the way to town for my treatment. My grandma was frantic. She didn't even have time to scold my mother, and instead dug out her life savings to take me to the doctor. That's how I managed to cling to life. It wasn't until the Seth siblings achieved fame and fortune in their later lives that my mother, with a heart full of solace, went to visit the grave of her lost love. That's when I found out. Back when Giselle fell gravely ill and her father was scrambling to borrow money everywhere, my mother's heart ached for them terribly. To make giving the money seem justified, my mother spent half the night the previous evening dabbing me with cold water. The next day, finding me burning up with fever, she took all the money we had at home, rushed to the hospital, and successfully handed the cash over to Giselle's father. Ever since my father passed away, my mother has been secretly taking things from our home to help the Shin family. We've been struggling to put food on the table for a long time now. My mother was at a loss for words and could only look at me with a pleading gaze. Cynthia, Mom knows you're as kind as I am. Swear to me that you'll take care of your brother and sister as they grow up. Hearing those same words again, I could barely contain the hatred welling up inside me. In my past life, I was fooled by her sweet talk just like this. I ate the coarsest food, saving the good grain for the 2 of them. I grew pale and thin, While they stayed plump and rosy-cheeked, I dropped out of school to support the family. While they went on to finish high school, I worked back-to-back shifts in an unregulated factory and got silicosis. While they were at school, full of ambition and spending money like water, if I didn't go, my mother would sit by the door, sighing and lamenting that she failed to raise me right and that my promises meant nothing. Then she'd resent her own incompetence, saying she couldn't even provide for her child and might as well be dead. Later on, whenever I disobeyed, she would kneel and kowtow to me in public, emotionally blackmailing me, and so, I was gradually pushed into becoming Seth and Giselle's nanny. 3. Mom, I know you have your reasons. My tears fell in a steady stream as I sniffled hard. I heard everything you said at Uncle Shin's grave that day. My mother's sobs cut in her throat, her face turning deathly pale. Even if it means squeezing the Lin family dry, I will raise these 2 children. Uncle and Grandma have a hard enough life as it is, and my cousins are still young. I'll listen to you. I'll drop out and support the family. Let me be the one to take care of you all. We shouldn't burden Uncle and Grandma any further. My grandma completely lost her temper and slapped my mom a dozen times across the face. You choose. If you adopt them, leave with nothing and get out. I'll take care of Cynthia. She doesn't need a heartless mother like you, my mom said with a pained expression. How can that be? Cynthia is still so young. She can't be separated from her mother. Now she suddenly remembers I'm young. In my previous life, I was only 2 months older than Seth and the others, but she used the excuse that as an older sister, I should be mature and sent me to a sweatshop to earn money. She didn't say I was too young back then. No one picked up on her remark. My grandma's stance was firm. Seth and Giselle were a bit scared. They had been certain that my mom would adopt them, but then I showed up as a major disruption. Now they were pitifully calling my mom Auntie Lou while huddling around her. My mom was still immersed in the pain of being coerced and was hugging Seth and the others, crying together. She knew all too well how hard life would be for a woman raising 2 children in the countryside without any support from her in-laws. I know my mother, even if she wanted to take care of Seth and Giselle, she was only thinking of making my grandma and me do the work. She herself couldn't tolerate the slightest hardship otherwise. In her past life, she wouldn't have been interviewed with such a rosy complexion and fair skin, praised for her inner beauty reflecting on her face and her kind heart. But this time, I won't let her leech off us anymore. Watching the Shin siblings' eyes darting nervously, I let out a sigh. I heard next semester's tuition is going up again. I wonder if you'll even be able to stay in school. Honestly, at your age, you could just go out and find work instead. The Shin family members nearby overheard this. Their eyes lit up, and they huddled together to discuss it. The occasional words that drifted over, brick factory, coal mine, get married, made the Shin siblings go pale. They clung to my mother's hand even tighter. Aunt Lou, you have to save us. I'm still too young. I don't want to get married. Giselle couldn't hold back her emotions and was sobbing uncontrollably. My mother was still hesitating. Seth pursed his lips and turned to reveal a face strikingly similar to his father's. For, Aunt Lou, please don't put yourself in a difficult position on our account. If my dad knew about this, he certainly wouldn't want you to suffer any hardship either. She quickly asked, did your father really say that? Yes, absolutely. My dad always said you were his best friend. Giselle quickly added more. That one sentence was like a shot of adrenaline for my mom. She stood up and shielded them behind her. Just like a hero, I'm going to take care of them. No matter how hard it gets, I will raise these 2 poor children. My grandmother was utterly disappointed and immediately drew up an agreement with the others. It stated that from then on, I was to sever all ties with her. My mother was frantic. What right do you have to stop me from contacting my own daughter? I raised her for all those years. She still insisted on rewriting the document, with the intention of making me support Seth and his sister, who's supporting him here. My grandmother didn't even bat an eye, tucking the signed agreement into her bosom. All these years, my mother has done nothing but wallow in self-pity or secretly hoard things to send to the Shin family. My grandma and uncle handle all the work in the fields, while all the household chores fall on my shoulders. If it weren't for her care, our family would have prospered long ago. No, that's not it. That's not it at all. She tried to explain further, but I cut her off. Mom, I knew you didn't want to take care of them. Let's just go home. I nudged past Giselle and wrapped my arm affectionately around my mother's. Auntie Lou, the hurt in Giselle's voice snapped my mother back to reality, and she shoved me away abruptly. You're grown up now. You'll be fine without me. Giselle and the others are still young. They need me more. As if afraid I'd cling to her, she hastily gathered Seth and the other child and left. The people who stayed behind looked at me with deep sympathy. What a heart-wrenching feeling it is to be abandoned by your own mother for the sake of children. who are nothing to her. I covered my face, sobbing my heart out, yet not a single tear fell. I felt great after successfully stopping Seth and her from entering my home. I wolfed down 2 bowls of rice in one go, nearly giving my grandma a fright. She tentatively suggested moving in to live with me. It's not about taking your house, it's just not safe for a young girl like you to live alone. Of course, I knew her intentions were good. Back when my father passed away, my grandmother wanted to move in to take care of us, but my mother, terrified that someone would find out she was secretly helping the Shin family, wouldn't allow my grandmother to stay. After I brought it up one too many times, my mother broke down in hysterical tears. "Do you think Cynthia is a girl, so you want to take over our house?" My grandmother was heartbroken and never mentioned it again. I took my grandmother's hand. "I know you love me the most. In my past life, it was this little old woman, hunched over, who claimed my body. She also went all the way to my mom and Seth to stand up for me. In this life, I will make sure she lives a good life." 5. Under grandma's care, my complexion grew healthier and rosier by the day. However, things weren't going so well for my mother. She had moved into the Shin family's house, but she doesn't have much money, so she can't provide a good life for Seth and them, so she set her sights on me instead. "Cynthia, it's no good just lazing around all holiday. I found you a decent job in town." The great job she mentioned was working as a hostess at the town's only KTV. "If it's so great, why don't you send Giselle?" My mother frowned and said, "That's out of the question. A girl like Giselle has no business being in a place like that. If she can't go, why should I be able to?" Seeing my refusal, my mother burst into tears, sobbing that she was useless and might as well be dead. I nodded in agreement. "They really should die." "Cynthia!" Another piercing scream rang out. The moment I shouted, my grandma heard the commotion and rushed out. Seeing my mom holding the vegetables she'd just picked from outside our house, she snatched them right out of her hands. A few hard slaps across the face made my mom swallow the rest of her words. Not daring to confront my grandma, she turned and ran without looking back. When the old ladies from the village came to visit, they said my mother cursed me every day for being an unfilial child. After raising her for over a decade, her own daughter showed less care for her than her adopted daughter did. To prove a point, she redoubled her efforts in caring for Seth and the other. She even, for the first time ever, went out to work in the fields. Back home, she attended to every need of Seth and the other, leaving no detail overlooked. Whenever she ran into me, she would fuss over Seth and the other with motherly concern, but my mom hadn't done much physical work in years. After just a few days, she was already complaining of aches and pains in her back. I had barely uttered a complaint when Seth brought up his late father. My mother rallied her spirits once more, vowing to make a better life for the two of them. The plan she came up with was to go into business, taking it upon herself to lease the village fish pond. With limited funds, the work on the fish pond ground to a halt halfway through. She's now become the laughingstock of the entire village. I heard she's been asking everyone for money lately. I don't have time to pay attention to that sort of thing. Once summer's over, I'll be a senior in high school. In my past life, I missed out on the university I'd always dreamed of. I must never give up in this life. On the first day of school, the moment I stepped into the classroom, I saw my mom there with Seth and the others. After not seeing her for 2 months, my mom looked like she had aged 10 years. As soon as she saw me, she rushed over and pulled Seth and Giselle down to their knees. "Cynthia, I'm begging you, please give Seth and Giselle their tuition money back." 6. A mother kneeling before her own daughter. What a spectacle. A crowd quickly gathered around them. I've seen this kind of scene play out far too many times. I didn't want to drop out of school, so she got down on her knees. I refused to work in that sweatshop, and she knelt down. When I was seriously ill and had to borrow money from Seth and his sister, she knelt then, too. It seems her kneeling is her ultimate argument. Mom really has no money left. Please, you have to help your younger siblings. They're still so young. They can't miss out on school. The same old story. I'm sick of hearing it. People around helped her up, and she looked at me with that pitiful, wronged expression. "Cynthia, Mom knows you don't like your younger siblings, but we can't go back on our word. Since we promised to take care of them until they grow up, we must keep that promise." Seeing that I remained unmoved, she started trying to rile up the others, fellow parents. I know my own daughter's character all too well. She's a compulsive liar with no respect for her elders. Her father passed away early, and I've struggled and sacrificed alone to raise her. I never imagined she'd turn out like this, even going so far as to withhold her own siblings' tuition money. I'm also uneasy about her staying at school. What if she ends up being a bad influence on the other students? I'd feel even worse then. Seth comforts my mom. Even if my sister is being selfish, only thinking about her own education and ignoring the family's debts, you still need to take care of your health. It's okay if my younger sister and I don't go to school. We'll go work the fields or find jobs. We'll give everything we have to make sure you live a good life. The other parents nearby, witnessing this tender scene of a mother's kindness and a child's filial piety, began whispering among themselves. With such a kind mother and a devoted younger brother, How did you still turn out so rotten, and you're the eldest child, you don't care at all that your mother has had such a hard life, you selfish, ungrateful wretch. How dare you still show your face at school? Hearing this, my mother felt even more justified in her actions and was practically itching to kneel and kowtow to me. Seth looks sad on the surface, but his eyes gleam with satisfaction, as if he's certain he has me under his thumb. In that case, don't blame me for being ruthless. I yank off my backpack and slam it into Seth. Cynthia, what are you doing? Amidst my mother's shocked and heartbroken cries, I let out a wail that shook the heavens and fell to my knees before her. 7. Mom, there really isn't any money left at home. Dad was buried in the coal mine, and the 3,000 yuan compensation you received, you sent it all to Uncle Shin's house to treat Giselle. She never expected I would know about this, and the panic on her face was plain to see. You're lying. Why would I lie? Have you forgotten to sneak that money over? You left me soaking in cold water for an entire night. Although I was only 5 years old at the time, it was so cold that night when you carried me to the hospital. As soon as we entered the hospital and it warmed up, I woke up and heard you tell Uncle Shin that you would lie to Grandma and say the money was lost, so Uncle Shin could accept it and use it to treat Giselle. Mom, you severed ties with me and moved to the Shin's house to better take care of Seth and Giselle. All the food and supplies from our home were taken to the Shin's house. Now I'm the only one left in the house, and I really don't have any money to give you. At the most heart-wrenching part, I even kowtowed heavily a few times to be completely free of my mother. What's a few kowtows? The people around were filled with righteous indignation, and she's the biological mother. She'd rather cut ties with her own child to care for some other man's bastard. How pathetic is that? She'd even throw her own child's life away just to hand her husband's compensation money over to some other man. She didn't even bother to hide her displeasure from Seth and the other guy. These two kids are probably here to pick the bones clean. First they took her mother, and now they're coming for the tuition money. Ungrateful wretches. They used up the compensation money back then, and now they're here to bully the man's daughter. Giselle, unable to take the scolding any longer, shot me a resentful glare. Your mother gave that to us willingly. It's none of your business. How can you curse your own mother? Are you even human? Jolted into awareness, my mother snapped back to reality. After all these years of putting you through school, and now all I ask is for you to help out a little more with your siblings, and you hold this much resentment to slander me in front of all these people? Cynthia, have you no conscience at all? My mother seemed utterly heartbroken, crying and cursing all at once. I'm not asking for much, just give me the money from this year's wheat harvest. I worked my fingers to the bone for that crop. What a nice little fantasy. You've never set foot in a field, yet you have the nerve to call it your own work. Seeing that I remained silent, Seth raised his voice. We've all heard. The harvest this year brought in 1,000 yuan more than before. Aunt Lu worked hard for that money. She deserves every bit of it. His smug, overconfident attitude was truly nauseating. I scoffed with disdain. Mom, do we even have any land? I had no idea. Is it on the east side of the village or the west? Of course, the fruits of your labor should stay with you. Seth and Giselle's faces lit up with hope as they urged my mother. Auntie Lu, come on, tell us. My mom hemmed and hawed for a long time, unable to get the words out. After marrying into the Chin family for over a decade, she's never even set foot in the fields to work, let alone brought meals out there. Ever since my father passed away, it's been my grandmother and uncle working our family's land. My mother just sits back and waits for the money to come in. Don't tell me she's never even worked the land, never lifted a finger to farm, yet she has the nerve to come asking for a share of the harvest. Has she no shame at her age? The hushed whispers around us gave my mother a rare, piercing sense of shame, as if her true intentions had been laid bare. Having run out of arguments, my mother started pleading with me again. Cynthia, dear, I know you're not heartless. You're kind, just like me. You wouldn't want to see your brother and sister miss out on school, would you? Why don't you go and borrow some money from your grandmother first, to pay for Seth and Giselle's tuition? 8. I cried even louder. Grandma is so old now. Mom, please, just let her be. Then, turning to Seth and Giselle beside her, she mimicked my mother's exact tactics. I'm begging you, please don't drive my grandmother to her death. Giselle yanked her hand away from mine, her voice sharp. Who's driving your grandmother to her death? I don't want your filthy money. Filthy money. In my past life, she took plenty of my hard-earned money. Even the money I begged for while gravely ill was taken by my mother to buy her a little cake. Pitiful me back then, too sick to get up. I ended up starving to death. My mom felt sorry for Giselle and gently rubbed the red mark on her wrist. Why are you using so much force? Giselle's skin is delicate, and you've already pulled it red. I was the one Who asked you to go? Don't make things difficult for Giselle. These are such talented children. If they don't go to school, isn't that a waste? Cynthia, you're grown up now. It's time to share the family's burdens. I think you should drop out of school and go work. After all, with your poor grades, you're just wasting your time. One moment she's saying not going to school ruins your future. The next she's telling me to quit and find work. Hearing her say those things makes me wonder if she's really my birth mother. A classmate who knew us shouted out loud. Cynthia ranks in the top 50 of her grade, while Seth and Giselle can't even make it into the top 500. How can they even say that? Seth clenched his fists in anger, and Giselle's face turned red. My mom still refused to give up. To support the family, I had to weed the fields and dig fish ponds during the day, do the laundry and cook at night. And whenever I had a spare moment, I'd go up the mountain to gather firewood. After all the suffering your mother has endured, can you really go to school with a clear conscience? Search your heart. I've seen this exact same act countless times in my past life. There's no way she could possibly manipulate me again. I rushed over and hugged my mom, and in passing, I slapped Seth and Giselle. My grandma's moves really work like a charm. So satisfying. Mom, I had no idea you were living like this, back home. I even used to wash your underwear for you. It's so much work to support Seth and Giselle, and they don't even appreciate it. They even expect you to borrow money for their tuition. Oh my goodness, you've really been through it. 9. Before she could even start to blame me, I continued, Mom, don't worry, I'll take care of this for you right now. My words left my mother completely bewildered. She only latched onto the last part about solving her problem. She felt relieved. At least Cynthia is sensible. I nodded and turned to leave. I'm going to help Seth and Giselle withdraw from school right now. No way. My mother abandoned her pretense of frailty, scrambling up from the floor to block my path. They've lost their parents and are already so pitiful. Can't you be more generous? You go out and earn money to support the family first. When we have the means later, I'll pay for your education then, and you have that scholarship every year, right? Just transfer it to Giselle. Or else I won't recognize you as my. Before she could finish, my grandma's slap landed squarely on her face. The time she wasted just now was enough for my grandma to sprint all the way to the school. This time, my grandma graciously bestowed a dozen more upon her. After the beating, my grandma raised the severance agreement in her hand and shouted, "Take a good look, everyone. This is the shameless document my daughter-in-law signed to support her lover's child. It's written in black and white. She's disowning my granddaughter. If you ever disturb my granddaughter's studies again, don't expect me to hold back." Under my grandmother's stern glare, my mother turned tail and fled. Holding back already meant dozens of slaps. If I didn't hold back, I'd have beaten her to a pulp. Bad news travels fast. The whole town was buzzing about the day's drama. Some people even started saying that Seth and Giselle were my mother's own children. Well, that's a bit of a stretch. After all, we're only 2 months apart. My classmates felt terrible for me and were very kind. It also helped that Seth and Giselle happened to be away for a few days. School had already been in session for days, and we still couldn't scrape together the tuition. My mother was so anxious she developed a blister on her lip. I had no mind to dwell on her distress. After dropping out in my previous life, I never had time for studying, and now I've long since forgotten everything. To catch up with the coursework, I applied to live on campus. Giselle begged my mother to send her to work at the KTV, saying her late father's only wish was for someone in the family to go to college, and she couldn't let him down. I was getting along swimmingly at school. It wasn't until I went home for the weekend that I heard the news. My mother had started working as a hostess in a KTV bar. 10. Even now, my grandma still can't believe it when she talks about it. Is your mom out of her mind, or what? She was determined to sacrifice herself to earn Seth's tuition. Seth swore he'd rather die than touch a dime of Giselle's hostess money, but the two of them, playing off each other, managed to send her own mother off to work at a KTV. My mother was heartbroken and refused to let her go, crying and pleading that there must be another way. Giselle swaggered over and planted herself in front of my desk. After saying this, my grandmother even glanced at me cautiously. Everyone has their own fate. That was her choice. I picked up a piece of egg and put it in my grandma's bowl, saying cheerfully, "Never mind her. Let's just focus on living our own lives well." Monday, school day. Cynthia, you really are heartless. Your own mother is out there entertaining men for money, and here you are, still able to focus on your studies. Giselle was just getting started. Her eyes lit up as she launched into her story. The classmates looked up and turned their attention over. Cynthia, her mom works at that KTV on the corner in town. Feel free to drop by and show your support if you're ever in need. I hear hostesses aren't allowed to refuse any request from a customer. I wonder if your mother would. She didn't get to finish. I cut her off with a slap. Without waiting for Giselle to react, I turned and left the classroom. That shriek, she must have learned it from my mother. What gives you the right to hit someone? Your mother does that kind of dirty work, and we're not even allowed to talk about it. A crooked stick will have a crooked shadow. You forced your own mother into hostess work. And yet you have the nerve to take that money and come to school. I'm afraid you'll soil the very ground of this place. If you have any sense of shame left, get out of this school. No, I thought for a moment, then gave a solemn nod. You're right, I can't believe my mom would take a job like that. She's really brought shame on our whole class. Giselle panicked. After all, she needed the wages from this sleazy job to pay for her education. I'm going to the police station right now. I'll make sure my mom mends her ways and turns over a new leaf. No, that's not what I meant. When we were called to the police station, Seth and the others were there too, but she couldn't stop someone like me, hardened by years of labor, and was knocked to the ground. 11. My mom was arrested. Cynthia, can you just not stand to see me happy? Seth's face darkened. Cynthia, Aunt Lou is your own mother. How can you be so heartless as to not even leave a job opportunity for her? My mother screamed, her voice raw with emotion. Giselle, didn't you just say at school that my mother being a hostess is shameful? So many classmates heard you. I went out of my way to solve your problem for you. What? You're not satisfied? The criticisms just roll right off your tongue. I let out a cold laugh. You two siblings are something else. One of you calls my mother vulgar and a disgrace to the school, and the other says I won't even leave a job opportunity for her. What? You two get to play the good guys. Under Seth's skeptical gaze, Giselle guiltily lowered her head. Giselle, that's how you see me. My mother was utterly devastated. She seemed to age 10 years in an instant. Slumping into her chair, Seth paused for a moment, as if making up his mind, then slapped Giselle hard and knelt before my mother. Aunt Lou, we will never forget your great kindness to us. Giselle is still young and doesn't understand things. Giselle speaks this way because my father spoiled her when he was alive. Mentioning Giselle's father, my mother was visibly moved. If my father knew Giselle would say such a thing, it would truly break his heart. Hugging Seth and Giselle, she started making solemn vows again, promising to support their education so Giselle's father could rest in peace. My mother's heart felt as sweet as honey, and she was instantly overcome with a dizzying joy. Seth is such a bright and knowledgeable boy. We owe the success of this fish farm to him. Honestly, Cynthia, you should quit school and help me with the fish. Once Seth gets into university, he'll be able to look out for you. By the time my mother realized she had to pay the fine and thought to look for me, I was already long gone, unable to borrow the money. My mother was locked up for a month before she was released. During that period, my grades improved by leaps and bounds, and I finally managed to break into the top 10 of my grade. On the day the final exam results came out, my grandmother happily cooked me a big feast. I was out in the yard pulling up some green onions when my mom showed up. She was wearing new clothes and arrived beaming with joy, carrying a bag of fish. Later, Grandma Wang told me that Seth had convinced my mom to take out a usurious loan. My mother smoothed down her new clothes. See, I've always had a good eye. It's just your grandma who's got no luck. A fine young man like that wanting to marry into our Chin family, and she still wasn't willing. That's just the mindset of someone destined to stay poor their whole life. My grandmother didn't say a word. She went to the east room, fetched the whetstone, and began sharpening the kitchen knife until its edge gleamed cold and sharp. My mom was so scared she took off running, scattering the fish all over the ground. 12. Grandma Wang winked and said, Solomon's father used to raise fish, and Solomon learned the trade too. She poured all of it into the fish pond. My grandma wondered, does she even know how to raise them? Back home, my mom never even fed a chicken. Solomon, my mom's top admirer, he grew up with my mom and Seth's father, and their relationships were like you love me, I love him too bad. Even if Seth's dad got married, my mom still wouldn't think much of him. He was always all by himself, which is how he ended up with the nickname Solomon. Granny Wang pursed her lips. If you ask me, your mom was clever. She got Solomon, so she didn't even have to pay wages. It was only a couple of years ago that he finally married a woman who's not all there, just to have someone to share his life with. Thinking about Giselle's smug face lately, I gave a pack of spicy strips to Granny Wang's grandson. He went to the path Sloane must take to the fields and spoke of Solomon's noble and selfless good deeds. Sloane moved quickly, rushing to the Shin household with a kitchen knife. Not explaining would have been better. Mentioning this only made Sloane even crazier. You've been taking advantage of my family for the last time. Pay up, you bitch. A whole crowd trailed behind her, keeping a wary distance as they watched her lose her mind right outside the Shin family's gate. The sound of shattering objects mixed with a woman's piercing screams, throwing the courtyard into complete chaos. My mother tried to explain, sister-in-law, you've got it all wrong. I never took your money. Sloane went mad years ago because of a 2-cent argument with someone. Money, my money, that wretched woman should die. The blade was a blur as it slashed through the air. My mother dodged frantically, and just as a blow was about to land on her, she instinctively yanked Seth, who was standing beside her, into the path of the strike. She's fine in daily life, but the moment money is mentioned, she has an episode and starts lashing out at everyone. A sharp cry of pain rang out, Seth's arm went limp, and blood began to pool on the ground. Several of the village men managed to pin Sloane down and wrest the knife from her grasp. With such a serious incident, the elders of the Shin family stepped in. They convened and decided that the Solomon family should cover the medical expenses. Solomon squatted by the hospital wall, wiping his nose on the sole of his shoe. When the Shin family asked again, Solomon told them to ask Sloane themselves. Seth lay in the hospital for half a month. You all know how she is. Money is her lifeblood. I don't have a single cent to give. After being discharged, Seth was no longer the sunny and cheerful person he had been in his previous life. He became eerily gloomy all day, and his classmates were afraid of him. They all shut up instantly. No one wanted to mess with that crazy woman. My mom is also at her wit's end. She's been at the hospital taking care of Seth. The tendons in his hand were severed, but with no money for a better hospital, the doctor could only perform a basic suture. Only when I got home did I realize that Sloane had sold all her fish. Seth seems like a completely different person now. He cooked but didn't eat, and even started blaming me. Giselle is also blaming me, saying she can't afford the things she wants and urging me to go work at the factory. She even chopped up the fry to feed the ducks. 13. My mom waited for me outside the school gate twice. The moment we met, they started pouring their heart out. Seeing Seth and his sister at the school gate, I cleared my throat. Mom, don't be so dramatic. What's so scary about working in a factory? Seth became disabled saving you. How can you see them as a burden? Look at the people from our village who came out of those factories. They're all sick. How can she even suggest such a thing? So she knew working in the factory could make you sick. In my past life, she was the one who begged and pleaded on her knees, forcing me to go, insisting everyone else was working there and I was just being difficult. Seth injured his right hand. Forget about studying. He might not even find a wife. Shouldn't you be saving up money now? Getting sick might even be better. At least you'd get compensation for a work-related injury. Cynthia, how could you say that to me? After I got sick, not only did they refuse to pay for my medical treatment, but they also snatched away my work injury compensation and gave it to Seth for a down payment on a house. Seth is grown now. How's he supposed to get a wife without a proper home? It's not like you're dying from this illness anyway. Just tough it out. My mom started screaming again. That's exactly what she did in my past life. Watching the hatred grow deeper in Seth's eyes only made me happier, knowing my mother, she would never sacrifice her own well-being to support Seth and his partner. Seth must have realized this too, because he actually started earning his own money. Well, this time around, without me carrying their burdens. Their relationship isn't so great after all. Working in a factory is out of the question. That reminds me, Giselle has been treating everyone to meals at school lately, handing out lavish gifts, and even boasting about taking her brother to the best hospital for treatment. How on earth did Seth manage to earn enough for the surgery just by picking mushrooms? Granny Wine complained to me, there are only so many mushrooms on that mountain, and he's picked them all. Just look at their new clothes and shoes, living the high life every day. Tisk, she's been picking mushrooms for years, so of course she's annoyed that someone just showed up out of the blue to steal her business. Seth still hasn't made it to the major hospital, but even an old hand like Granny Wine only makes pocket change at best. It turns out that a few days ago, Giselle took a group to a hotel restaurant, throwing her money around by telling everyone to order whatever they wanted, and she even demanded they all give me the cold shoulder. 14. In the chaos, Seth was shoved to the ground. The loan sharks came knocking first. Didn't you say the loan was for a year? It's only been 6 months. A row of loan sharks stood there, impatiently rapping their knuckles on the table. None of us brothers have money for the new year, and here you are, throwing our cash around like a big shot. I also remembered how, in my past life, Seth went straight home for 2 months right after graduation. My mother's name came up in conversation, and that's how the loan sharks tracked us down. My mother insisted we had no money, so the lenders ransacked the Shin house, taking everything. They even tore the door off its hinges and took that too. Don't go west. Seth has scoured that area who knows how many times. Head east, that's my turf. Nobody else dares to go there, so there are plenty of mushrooms. Someone stepped on his right arm, and his face instantly went deathly pale. Tsk, even a major hospital probably couldn't fix this. The Shin family brought out quite a few nice things, refrigerators, color TVs, and all sorts of rare delicacies. No wonder my mom's face has looked fuller lately. The sudden wealth of the Seth siblings was instantly explained. They bought a spacious 3-bedroom apartment as soon As they returned to the city, they even claimed the money came from a business they started during university. If you ask me, there's definitely something fishy going on. With 3 days off, I decided to pack some provisions and head straight for the mountains. Granny Wang saw me heading up the mountain and helpfully pointed east. Looking back now, the Seth siblings in my past life always had ginseng. Yet they still accepted my hard-earned money without a shred of guilt. What's more, they actively encouraged my mother's exploitation of me. She said it with pride, as if showing off her hard-won territory. Given how formidable she is, it's no wonder others steer clear. I thanked her for her kindness and immediately headed west. After wandering for 2 days, I finally discovered a ginseng root tied with a red cord deep in the mountains. It was a rather sizable one. Beside the ginseng was a small pit, with a single red cord lying scattered nearby. Well, it seems the Seth duo finally did something decent for once. Meanwhile, Seth and Giselle were having a rough time. What a pair of animals, but in this life, they can forget about making a comeback. Humming a cheerful tune, I pulled the small shovel from my basket. That same day, I took the bus into the city and returned with a passbook for 100,000 yuan. Thankfully, I had just turned 18 and money is one of those things. There's no peace of mind like having it in your own hands. Several times, I've seen Seth and Giselle blaming each other. 15. This has been the happiest year of my life. In previous years, no matter how hard we worked to prepare the New Year's goods, my mother would send them all to the Shen family. At best, I'd get a bowl of dumplings and a few meatless bones to gnaw on. Ever since the Shen siblings moved in, I couldn't even get a taste of dumplings anymore. There were 4 of us, but my mom would only cook 3 bowls of dumplings, dividing them among the 3 of them. Feeling sorry for her, I'd always push my share toward her and just boil myself a plain bowl of noodles. Then one night, I couldn't sleep and heard noises from the kitchen. I found my mom with the Shen siblings, devouring a roast chicken, all 3 of them with greasy, satisfied smiles. My mother saw me and didn't seem the least bit flustered. She said the chicken was a gift from the Shen family relatives, and there was none for me. She even said I was lazy during the day and didn't do any work, which was why I couldn't sleep at night. In truth, I woke up that night because I was hungry. The aroma of the fried meatballs pulled me out of my memories. My cousin was holding a freshly fried one, stuffing it into my mouth. It was so fragrant and crispy. Time flew by. Spring had barely begun to show its face before summer swept it away. After my rebirth, I studied every minute I could, not wasting a single moment. In several mock exams, I consistently ranked at the top. Cynthia, do you have any money left? The college entrance exam is coming up, and Mom wants to buy Seth a new pair of shoes. With the fish pond gone, the money from selling the ginseng was squandered by them too. We could only rely on my mother's meager income from farming to support the 2 of them. Didn't you get a scholarship? Let Mom use it for now. Seth hasn't bought new shoes in months. What if he doesn't do well in the exam? One said they shouldn't have been so flashy. The other complained they should have gone up the mountain sooner. Yet the looks they gave me were identical in their resentment. A week before the college entrance exams, my grandma prepared a table full of delicious food. Eat up, and don't be nervous during the exams. No matter how well or poorly you do, it's okay. Your grandma has the money to take care of you. I sniffled, tears welling up in my eyes. I can't imagine how heartbroken my grandmother must have been in my past life, having to bury her own grandchild. Given this miraculous second chance, I'm absolutely determined to be a devoted and filial granddaughter. 16. The national college entrance exam was held in the city, so all the students set off early. My grandmother is getting on in years, so I didn't ask her to accompany me. While waiting for the bus, I ran into my mother, who was seeing the Shen siblings off. I hadn't seen her in a long time. She had aged even more, with a few strands of white hair now. She was delighted to see me. Sloan, what are you doing here? I wasn't the least bit surprised by what she said, nor was I upset. No, I don't. My mother wasn't satisfied and pressed further. A roar echoed from a distance, and Sloan picked up a stick from the roadside, brandishing it as she charged toward my mom, annoyed to the point of a headache. I looked into the distance and exclaimed with feigned surprise, ever since the last incident, Sloan has had a meltdown whenever she hears the word money. My mother chided me. You've lied to me several times already. I know you have the money. Money, my money. Give me back my money, you wretched woman. Seth frowned, looking at me with disdain. The aunties waiting for the bus were spitting all over Seth's face. Hearing the commotion, my mother took off running without even looking back. She fled, she pursued, and in a moment, they vanished from sight. Seth quickly defended himself. I wasn't talking about you guys. You're nothing but a liar. Even after making it to high school, you can't shake off that wretched country bumpkin nature, I exclaimed, my voice rising in surprise. Everyone standing Here is from the countryside. What's your problem with country folk? You look down on us. No one wanted to hear his excuses. People crowded onto the bus one after another, and when it came to Seth and his sister, the conductor closed the door. What little schooling you had was a complete waste. What kind of nonsense are you spouting? Your ancestors for 8 generations are from this very village. Who do you think you're looking down on? Your mother may have been a city girl, but she ran off the moment your father died. You're the one being raised by country folk, so don't bite the hand that feeds you. Luckily, you were smart enough not to listen to Giselle. I asked around, and your mom is fine in the village. On the day of the college entrance exam, Giselle stopped me outside the exam venue. It's full, wait for the next one. I couldn't help but laugh at the sight of the half-empty bus. 17. The final exam was over. A wave of relief finally washed over me. The homeroom teacher also breathed a huge sigh of relief. Giselle saw me and assumed I had gone back to the village, satisfied as she entered the exam hall. After the exam, Giselle found out that I had taken the entire exam and was furious. She said my mom had been driven to jump into the river by loan sharks and insisted I go home to see her. What's more important, the college entrance exam or your mother's life? I didn't want to argue with her, so I pretended to be panicked and hurried out. Seth tried to help, but was held back by the villagers, and a few ants also pretended to stop me. I found my homeroom teacher nearby and asked her to make some inquiries for me. I effortlessly reached out and pinched Giselle several times. On the bus back to the village, she started making snide remarks. Some people are just born ungrateful. They don't even care about their own mother. What's the use of getting high scores on a test when your heart is rotten to the core? I just chuckled, stowed my luggage, and pinned her down to give her a few slaps. Shut your filthy mouth. I'll fix that for you free of charge. Aunties, please help me out here. Giselle told me right before the exam that my mom was on her deathbed and I needed to rush back. If it weren't for my homeroom teacher's help, I wouldn't have been able to take the exam this time. Giselle, at such a young age, is so malicious, trying to ruin someone's entire future. Cynthia, you've always been quick and efficient at work since you were little. Why don't you stay home and help mom, while Giselle, being pampered, takes your place at university? The college entrance exam is a major life event, and the whole village was quite taken aback. She looked at me reproachfully, her tone full of indulgence for Giselle. After that, their reputation was completely ruined. That whole summer, they were too afraid to leave the house, terrified of facing the villagers' scornful whispers and pointing fingers. My mother was heartbroken. She worked from dawn till dusk, driven by sheer determination to save up for their tuition. On the day the results came out, I used the money from selling the ginseng to buy 2 old shopfront properties in the most remote part of the city. No one knew that this area would be designated as a new development zone the following year, transforming it into prime real estate where every inch of land would be worth a fortune. 18. When I got home, my grandma found out I scored 603 on the exam. I grabbed my folding stool and headed straight for the village gossip hub, determined to make sure my mom heard the news. After hearing about it, my mom came over to congratulate me, but the look on her face didn't seem happy at all. Giselle is so pitiful without parents. Can't you just let her be? Once she graduates and makes something of herself, mom will definitely have her find you a good match in the city. The harsh sunlight beat down on her, casting shadows in the fine lines on her face. She looked even older than she had when I died in my past life. A bit of the resentment in my heart seemed to dissipate. For the first time, I spoke to her with genuine seriousness. Mom, am I really your biological daughter? She was taken aback. Of course you are. I was in labor for days when I had you. You mustn't forget the suffering your mother endured. I asked her, what kind of mother would stop her own daughter from going to college after she got in? Grandma Wang said that after my mom left, Giselle went crazy and started causing a scene. During the argument, Giselle hit my mom on the head with a ladle. I said with a blank expression, if I could, I'd wish to be an orphan too. She was about to say more, but I shouted for my grandma at the top of my lungs. It wasn't that I didn't want to kick her out, but in a rural place like this, no matter how out of line a mother acts, if her child talks back, the child will be the one people gossip about behind their back. With my grandma as my secret weapon, there was no need for me to get involved. The next day, news of my mom being hospitalized spread all over the village, but she doesn't think about how in their previous lives, the Shin siblings graduated from university and achieved success in their careers. This time, she's only been their guardian for a year, and neither of them passed the exams. Seth even became disabled because of her. I don't care, you go and beg her again. Why should she get to go to university and not me? There was a classmate whose mom worked at the TV station. When I went to play with her, I casually brought up the Shin family's situation, Seth's crippled arm, and the complicated history between my mom and Giselle's father. My mother almost died because of her. She was knocked unconscious and didn't wake up for a whole day, but after waking up, not only did he not blame her, he even wanted to take them to the TV station to record a show. My hands, which were shelling sunflower seeds, froze. That can't be right. The time for recording that show in my past life was still 7 or 8 years away, unless my mom has been reborn too. 19. She couldn't wait to claim the title of most beautiful foster mother. Eager to turn her fortunes around quickly, Giselle tipped money from the production team and spilled everything she could and couldn't say. Sure enough, the production team found the whole affair too mundane and lacking in appeal, deeming it not worth filming. My mother camped out at the TV station's entrance, convinced that filming would make her an overnight sensation. Just like in her past life, the staff were utterly exasperated. They couldn't get rid of her no matter how hard they tried. She claimed that her father had been flirting with Aunt Lou before he died, that Aunt Lou had sent all the family's money, and that Aunt Lou hated Giselle's mother for stealing her love, so she abused her and prevented their siblings from going to college. Her mother's eyes lit up. She grabbed her purse and headed straight for the TV station. My mom finally made it big. If you consider infamy a form of fame, however, the production team edited it all out, leaving only the scene of Giselle tearfully accusing my mom. Giselle's biological mother saw the show, came running back the moment she caught wind of it, and hugged them while crying her eyes out. The whole story was riddled with fabrications. She left my mom completely speechless. Once my mom snapped out of it, she hurriedly tried to explain. Giselle said smugly, "I gave your mother back to you, now my real mom is back, and she's a big shot. She's taking me away to live the good life, and I'm never coming back to this dump of a village." After the show aired, many people sympathized with the Shin siblings and even wanted to send them donations through the TV station. Giselle's mother had no choice but to confess that she was drowning in debt, and that if she didn't take them with her, she'd be beaten to death. With just a few words, he sweet-talked them into throwing my mother out of the house. My mother, weeping bitterly, wanted to come back home, but when she reached the door and saw my grandmother holding a knife, she was too terrified to come any closer. Back then, Giselle felt sorry for her biological mother and knelt before my mom, begging for her help. I offered no comment. If she knew what her biological mother did in her past life, she'd keep a mile away from her. In her previous life, her mother also didn't return until over a year later, crying that she couldn't bear to be apart from her children and insisting on taking them both away. My mother guarded the Shin siblings fiercely and didn't let a single one be taken. My mother couldn't bear to see it. This is a woman Brother Shin once loved. I can't just stand by and do nothing. To pay off Giselle's mother's debts, she went and signed another 3-year contract at the sweatshop I was stuck in, using my wages to play the saint. All in all, it took me 6 years to pay back the factory wages my mother had drawn in advance, and my health was ruined in the process. A shiver ran down my spine as I recalled the agony before my death. Seth and his sister left without a second thought, following Giselle's mother. My mother begged and pleaded on her knees, but they were gone, leaving her weeping until her eyes were nearly blind. No, Seth and Giselle always listened to me. How could this happen? 20. Just before school started, Granny Wang told me in a hushed, secretive tone that Seth and Giselle had been arrested. Yesterday, the police came to our village, saying they were investigating the Shin family. After they went to the city, they were taken control of by their mother's creditors. They were beaten first, then forced to help their mother pay off the debt. The men were taken to become thieves, and the women were taken for prostitution. Seth's arm was crippled, so he couldn't steal much, and later he was assigned to participate in robberies. Giselle, with her sweet voice, took the initiative to engage in scams. They had a knack for this, and when the verdict came down, they were sentenced to nearly the same time as the small-time leaders. My mother also heard about it and came to me in a daze. How is it so different from my past life? It shouldn't be like this. I smirked sarcastically. How should it be? You want me to drop out of school and work to support you, right? And then kick me aside and drive me to death? My mother was shocked, tinged with guilt. How do you know? Did you do something? You're the one who harmed Seth and Giselle. You're so evil, just like your father. I shook my head. It wasn't me who harmed them. Those who do evil will eventually bring it upon themselves, and you're not worthy to mention my father. Back then, you married my dad because you couldn't be with the one you loved. That was your choice. No one forced you. Giselle's dad wasn't still hung up on you. He just saw you as an easy mark to fund his spending. He bragged in the village that you were so desperate. The more he ignored you, the more you clung to him. Everyone in the village knows it, but you're such a fool to believe his lies. My mom's eyes were vacant. No, Cynthia, you're lying to me, aren't you? Shin said he ignores me because he's afraid his wife will be jealous and cause trouble. He only loves me. I let out a cold laugh. Oh, he says he loves you, then spends your money on another woman and has 2 kids with her. He really loves you, huh? My mother began weeping and laughing hysterically, staggering toward the dilapidated house at the edge of the village. I watched her with amusement. Playing crazy won't get you out of paying your debts. You know, the loan sharks will be here soon. The swaying figure on the path faltered, the interest on those high-interest loans compounded, turning into an even larger sum. My mother still wanted to come find me, but I had already started at a new school. She dragged the loan shark into the house. But there was only my grandmother, an old lady who could fake a fall and extort anyone at any time. She couldn't even say which school I was attending. My mom was taken by loan sharks to repay her debt. Grandma Wang said my mom was sent to a black coal mine, the very one she forced my dad to go to back then. The 2 commercial properties were demolished, and we got 6 apartments in return, making me a landlady overnight. I didn't tell anyone about this, carrying 6 keys. I enjoy collecting rent endlessly. Money must be in your own hands to feel secure. Turning around, I saw my grandmother tending to her flowers on the balcony, and I felt at ease. Granny, I earned some money from my part-time job and bought you a gold necklace. Oh dear, you work so hard. Don't buy me anything next time. I smiled and gently put it on her. Okay, and story 2. My father is an online sensation, praised by everyone as the most admirable homeroom teacher. He was also my homeroom teacher. During our final year of high school, he asked me to help look after a kid with a limp. Since his family was poor, I started bringing him a hard-boiled egg every day. I tutored him diligently because his grades were poor, but then things took a turn. He started spreading rumors that I had a crush on him, accusing me of harassment, and begging me to leave him alone. To make matters worse, a video of me leaning in while he pushed me away somehow ended up online. My classmates, unaware of the truth, mocked me for putting on an act and having such peculiar taste. My father, with a dark expression, ordered me to go home and reflect on my actions. My mother took me to the little cripple's house to confront them, but we were both pushed and fell from the building. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the day my father told me to help the little cripple. The bell for our senior year class had just rung. My father strode purposefully to the front of the classroom. Class, our student Harry has been having trouble with his legs. Recently, on his way home from school, he took a fall and injured his other foot. He's just starting to recover now. To prevent something like this from happening again, is there anyone willing to help look after him and walk with him to and from school? Everyone turned to look at Harry sitting in the back row, but no one said a word. As he slowly raised his head, the classmates averted their gaze again, some pursing their lips, others shaking their heads. Harry was short in stature with a disabled left leg that made him walk with a pronounced limp. Yet his skin was unnervingly pale as someone suffering from some incurable disease. What's more, he spoke very little and had this intensely peculiar way of looking at people. It made others instinctively keep their distance. Soon, hushed whispers began circulating among the students below. One, damn, who'd want to help a freak like that? Walking with him makes me feel like my life's in danger. Ugly people always cause trouble. If you can't even walk properly, just stay home instead of making problems for the whole class. Tisk, let someone else deal with him. I'm not getting involved. The sight of him makes me lose my appetite. Ahem, ahem. My dad coughed to stop the whispering in the room, then said with profound sincerity, despite his physical challenges and having only his grandfather as family, Harry has persevered all the way to senior year. A remarkable demonstration of tenacity in his studies that deserves everyone's admiration. Is there anyone willing to step forward to help him complete the college entrance exams? The room remained silent, watching his mouth open and close. I couldn't help but think of a fish on the chopping block, waiting to be killed. After a moment of daze, I suddenly snapped back to reality. I've actually been reborn. I've gone back to the day my dad told me to help that little cripple. Remembering what my dad did in my past life, a shiver ran down my spine, and my body started trembling uncontrollably. Zoe, are you okay? Someone gently poked me in the back, their voice sweet, but a chill ran down my spine. It was Gloria, my dear sister. I didn't realize she was also my father's daughter until I was on my deathbed. Before marrying my mother, my father had been involved with another woman, who became pregnant with her during that time. She was given her mother's surname at birth. She was an excellent student, always coming in second to me, the perpetual runner-up in our class. In my previous life, she conspired with my father to frame me, bribing Harry to spread rumors about my poor character and even posting a video online that made it look like I was throwing myself at him just because her grades weren't as good as mine. She couldn't stand living in my shadow and wanted to ruin me. Ahem, ahem. My dad cleared his throat again and gave me a meaningful look. Harry's English grades are poor. Zoe, as the English class representative, you should commute to and from school with him from now on. Use that time to speak English and help improve his listening skills. Sure enough, since I didn't volunteer, he still found a way to push Harry onto me when I didn't respond. Gloria muttered a few words behind my back. Who'd want to take on such a heavy burden? But if we want to improve his English, Zoe, you're the only one who can help. So that's what this is about. They just want me to take this problem off their hands. I paid no attention. Just sneered to myself. Time seemed to freeze at that moment. The classroom was dead silent, yet I could feel the tension in the air. My father's seemingly calm face was shadowed by a gathering storm, as if thunder and lightning could erupt at any moment, but no, I wasn't the least bit afraid. I slowly rose to my feet and turned to look at Harry. He's already 18, and he's a guy. I'm a girl, it wouldn't be appropriate. Harry's eyes visibly dimmed, and he buried his head in his chest. Ridiculous. What's this nonsense about boys and girls being inconvenient? How old are you anyway? You're just high school students. Focus on your studies and help each other out. After all these years of education, you still haven't raised your level of thinking. My dad raised his voice and started ranting at me just because I'm his daughter. He felt completely justified and entitled to say those things, but I'm not the same Zoe from my past life anymore. He can't intimidate me anymore. There's actually another reason behind his intense reaction. He has an account on Douyin with over 1 million followers, called The Most Beautiful Homeroom Teacher. The shop window only sold books, and he claimed all proceeds would be donated to Hope primary schools in impoverished Western mountain regions, but in reality, he only donated a small portion, while the majority was used to support Gloria and her daughter, and I was actually the main reason this account went viral, because he edited some classroom surveillance footage and posted it on the account. The content essentially highlighted his impartiality. He selflessly awarded honors to other students, even when they were less accomplished than me, and most of those other students were Gloria, his other daughter. Fueled by the online buzz, he instantly went viral. My recent action undoubtedly cost him a potential piece of content to fuel the trending discussion. Ugh, what a hypocritical facade. To my surprise, Harry stood up at that moment and started hobbling toward me, dragging his lame leg. Zoe, my leg is disabled. With my condition, what outrageous thing could I possibly do? I genuinely want to improve my English grades too. Could we commute to and from school together? I'm begging you. Harry looked at me, pleading in a low voice like a pitiful puppy. No, I stared at him coldly. Because I hate you. Harry froze, his gaze turning strange as he looked at me. My father's expression grew increasingly complicated. Just then, Gloria, who was sitting behind me, finally couldn't stay seated any longer. Zoe, is there some misunderstanding between you two? The things you just said don't sound like you at all. You've always been such a warm and kind person. I glanced at Gloria and sneered. I've always been kind and caring. Then how come you got the Municipal Merit Student Award instead of me, and the Outstanding Class Leader title? Why did you get that too? Well, I got nothing. Gloria's face instantly flushed crimson, her jaw going slack with disbelief. She clearly hadn't expected me to confront her so directly, leaving her momentarily speechless. I pressed on. If you're so capable, why haven't you stepped up to help Harry? Or are you just paying lip service while secretly seeing him as dead weight? I emphasized the word burden heavily, and Harry beside me hung his head again. I stared at him expressionlessly, taken aback by my words. Gloria froze for a moment before flusteredly saying, I never thought that way. You're being way too harsh, Harry. I'll walk to and from school with you from now on. Finally, under my relentless pressure, Gloria gave in. Before I could even settle in, Gloria confronted me again. I can take Harry to and from school, but my English really isn't as good as yours. Since Harry is so eager to improve his English scores, you should help him out too. I paused for a moment, thought it over, and said hesitantly, it's not that I can't, but our seats are quite far apart, which makes it a bit inconvenient. Gloria smiled. No problem. You can always switch seats. How about you swap places with Harry? You're a good half head taller than him, I interjected flatly, looking straight at her. Hearing this, Gloria's eyes widened as she stared at me like I was a complete stranger. In my previous life, Gloria had talked me into moving to the back row to sit with Harry. I ended up constantly distracted by the troublemakers behind us, and my grades plummeted, dethroning me from the top two. Given a second chance at life, I certainly wasn't going to let her have her way. My comment made the surrounding classmates realize how out of place Gloria looked sitting up front, as if she'd pulled strings to get that seat. Their gazes toward her turned noticeably unfriendly. My father stood at the lectern with a darkened expression, grinding his teeth in frustration, yet he couldn't bring himself to say anything. Gloria bit her lower lip, eyes reddening as if she were on the verge of bursting into tears any second. I teased, what's wrong, honor student? Feeling like you don't belong in the back, thinking only Underachievers sit there, the gazes of the students behind her pierce through her in unison. Gloria shrank back and quickly said, what are you talking about? Fine, I'll switch seats, it's no big deal. Checkmate. My dad was livid, but with things having gone this far, he couldn't very well backtrack. He could only watch helplessly as his precious daughter made her way to the back row. Harry hobbled over behind me, his arms laden with a thick stack of books. Gotta hand it to the gimp, he's got a sense of responsibility, tipped Gloria's favor and actually followed through for her. During self-study period, he kept pestering me with English questions, as if afraid I might actually have time to study. These were the exact words Gloria whispered to me at my deathbed in my previous life. I half-heartedly answered a few questions before putting my foot down. Listen, Harry, I did agree to help you, but you can't monopolize all my time. I'm a student too, and I need to study as well. Besides, constantly asking questions like this is disrupting everyone else's studying. My deskmate glanced back at Harry and said, exactly, like a fly buzzing nonstop. Listen, Gimpy, with your grades nearly at the bottom, do you really need to bother Zoe with questions? How selfish. Can't improve your own scores and now trying to drag down our class's top student destined for Tsinghua or Peking University. Now that you mention it, that does sound rather sinister. Before I even had a chance to really get going, my classmates started chiming in one after another. Harry shut his mouth indignantly. In my past life, Harry played no small part in my grades plummeting so drastically. Back then, he kept asking questions just like today. I thought he had finally realized the importance of studying and making progress. Not wanting to dampen his enthusiasm, I sacrificed my own study time and taught him with all my heart. Little did I know, he only meant to harm me. Ding, the jarring school bell snapped me back to reality. After school, I saw Gloria reluctantly following Harry out of the school gate, but she hadn't gone far before she ditched Harry, walking away briskly as if avoiding the plague, picking up her pace with every step. As I passed by Harry, he suddenly called out to me, "Thank you, Zoe. I know you still care about me." Me care about him? I took a wary step back, looking at him with disgust. You think I care about you? Of course. You must have been worried about me. That's why you followed along. Hearing such shameless words made me sick to my stomach. I snapped, "Stop flattering yourself. I've told you before, I despise you. I truly do. The sight of you disgusts me, not because of your disability or your appearance, but because your soul is rotten. Stay away from me." Do I make myself clear this time? Harry stood frozen in place, staring at me in stunned silence. He seemed to be wondering why I, who had always been so tolerant of others, would detest him so intensely after leaving the little cripple far behind. I quickened my pace home, eager to see my mother. She was the one who loved me most in this world. In our previous life, she was pushed off the balcony by Harry's deranged grandfather and died a tragic death alongside me. In this life, I won't let the tragedy repeat itself. I will protect my mother. The moment I stepped inside, I rushed into the kitchen, threw myself into my mother's arms, and sobbed while holding her tight. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I've missed you so much. Mom, this time I won't let anything happen to you." My mother gently stroked my head. "But I'm perfectly fine." "Zoe, what's gotten into you? Did something happen?" I wiped my tears and tried to steady my voice. "Mom, Dad has been lying to you. He's been lying to both of us. When he doesn't come home at night, he's not taking care of Grandma at her place at all. He's been going to Joda community." Before I could finish, Mom staggered and nearly collapsed. I quickly steadied her and guided her to the living room sofa. When she had calmed down, I continued, "He went into the building with my classmate Gloria and her mother. People in the neighborhood say the three of them have lived there for years, and they say he's Gloria's father." My eyes welled up again, tears spilling out despite my efforts to hold them back, yet Mom remained calm, gently wiping away my tears, seeing her face gradually grow serene, as if she had already sensed it, and I had merely confirmed her suspicions. This was something Gloria told me right before I died in my previous life. Killing me wasn't enough for her. She wanted me to die in agony, consumed by hatred. Little did she know, I've returned with memories of my past life intact. Drying my tears, I hugged my mother and whispered, "We're done with this guy. We want." In the days that followed, Harry became much more subdued, only occasionally asking me a few simple questions. It seemed like a performance put on for those watching. After accepting favors, you've got to at least make a show of it to save face. Soon enough, the first monthly exam after my rebirth arrived. I got first place again. "Zoe, you're number one again. I heard you were top of your class in middle school, but I never expected you to maintain that streak in high school. That's seriously impressive, absolutely remarkable. At this rate, you're definitely getting into Tsinghua or Peking University. My respect. Consistently brilliant and steady. Are you the reincarnation Of the god of literature or something. Oh, come on, you're just teasing me, I replied with a laugh to my classmates' compliments. In my previous life, after I moved to the back of the classroom, I was constantly distracted by the underachievers and spent a huge chunk of my time tutoring Harry. As a result, my exam scores kept slipping until I fell out of the top 10 this time around. It was Gloria who ended up sitting in the back. As expected, her grades started to decline, dropping from second place to seventh. Well, that's what you call outsmarting yourself. Instead of dragging me down, you ended up falling first. That made her so angry she turned pale. On my way home from school, I saw Gloria leading Harry into a small alley. Harry, here's some for now. You must find a way to bring her grades down. I'm sick of her always being ahead of me. I've really had enough. Once the job's done, I'll throw in extra cash. This should keep you going for a long while. Could even buy your granddad's medicine. How much extra? This much. I stood listening at the alleyway corner, my expression darkening by the second. The sky grew dark, dark clouds loomed overhead. I knew a storm was brewing. The next day, Harry was like a changed man, eagerly seeking my advice. He kept quizzing me nonstop, from closed tests to reading comprehension. He wouldn't even let me be during breaks, dragging me into speaking and listening drills, but he could barely understand a word or string a sentence together. He was just wasting my time. Then my dad came over and laid into me, demanding to know why my tutoring was making Harry's English grades worse instead of better. He couldn't even score 60 points anymore, and Dad told me to get his grades up, pronto. If I weren't his daughter, would he dare make such an unreasonable demand of me? Very well, but has he ever treated me like a daughter? In his heart, Gloria is his only real daughter. Still, I swallowed my anger and pretended to comply. I heaved a sigh of relief. Pride comes before a fall. 3. Harry, ever the opportunist, thought I was genuinely intimidated and became even bolder. Shamelessly, he handed me the entire English exam paper and demanded I explain it all. Halfway through the explanation, I pretended to lose steam and showed weakness for the first time. Please, stop making me explain. I'm about to be sick of talking. What do I have to do for you to let me go? Harry paused for a moment, then after a few seconds of thought, a sly grin spread across his face. How about you accompany me to and from school from now on? Gloria is irresponsible. She often ditches me halfway. Well, I hesitated briefly before agreeing. All right then. I knew exactly what kind of mischief he was plotting. In my past life, while walking him home, he suddenly shoved a 100 yuan bill into my hand, saying it was to thank me for looking after him. Knowing his family was dirt poor, how could I accept his money? I stepped forward to return it, but he kept pushing me away. Such a heartwarming scene. It felt like a story of gratitude and reciprocation. But soon after, Harry started spreading rumors everywhere that I had a crush on him, that I was harassing him, begging me to leave him alone. Soon after, that misleading video was uploaded online. That's when I realized Harry had set me up, but I couldn't figure out for the life of me why he'd want to harm me. It wasn't until I was falling from the building, right before blacking out, that Gloria gave me the answer. Here he goes again. But this time, I'm afraid I'll let him down. I took off my black-framed glasses and put in contact lenses, applied light makeup while looking in the mirror. I pulled out the hair tie from my ponytail, letting my raven black hair cascade down naturally, youthful, radiant, and full of vitality. When I approached Harry, he was taken aback at first, then his lecherous gaze remained glued to me. Along the way, I deliberately kept my distance from him, though I stole glances at him from time to time. Our eyes met, and I gazed at him with tender affection. He was flustered. The chemistry between us was heating up. I knew the moment had come. Harry, I actually like you. Fighting back nausea, I forced out the words against my will. Harry stared at me in surprise for a moment, then without hesitation, he limped toward me with a lecherous grin. He grabbed me and tried to kiss me. After struggling back and forth, I shoved him hard to the ground, wiped my tears, and ran away. That very night, a video of Harry attempting to assault me was posted online. That night, I slept soundly in my mother's arms. The next day, the video went viral. Not bad. The school had to take the matter seriously. In the school office, I met Harry's grandfather. He rushed over in a hurry, hunched over in a shabby grey down jacket stained with grease, for he lifted his long, deeply wrinkled face, fixing me with an intense stare from his murky, narrow eyes. At first, I flinched, but as I looked at him, my fear slowly turned into hatred. In my past life, it was this withered old man who pushed my mother and me off the balcony. Teachers, you must stand up for my Harry and see that justice is done. Harry told me that little tramp deliberately seduced him to set him up. You can't let that video blind you to the truth. That little hussy is pure evil, a real troublemaker. ****. My father cleared his throat awkwardly. Mind your language. I knew he was just afraid that his lack of reaction would seem odd. After all, I I'm his daughter, at least in name. What nonsense are you spouting, you old fool? If you dare spread lies about my daughter again, I'll tear your mouth to shreds. My mother shielded me, her chest heaving with anger. Don't act like your daughter's some saint. If she wasn't interested in Harry, why would she shamelessly insist on walking him home? She's clearly had a crush on my Harry for ages. My mother pointed a trembling finger at his grandfather. That's enough. This really isn't such a big deal. You've been classmates for years. Let's not blow this out of proportion. My father adjusted his glasses and continued, Zoe, make a video explaining it was all a misunderstanding. Let's get this under control first. I stared at my father in disbelief. That wasn't what he'd said in my previous life. Back then, he forced me to drop out and apologize to Harry in front of the whole class. I thought I was prepared, but my heart still clenched with a sharp pang of pain. Ken, that's bullshit. Your own daughter got bullied and you're sitting here playing peacemaker instead of giving a damn. My mother glared at them icily. I've already called the police. Harry's head snapped up, and for the first time I saw genuine panic in his eyes. Before his grandfather could even start his tantrum, the police arrived on the scene. As the police led Harry away, he glanced back at me. It felt like a sharp blade piercing right through me. Harry had just turned 18 a few days prior, while I still had 6 months to go before my 18th birthday. This practically amounted to an adult taking advantage of a minor. I heard the charges are quite serious. Still no telling how long he'll be locked up. After he left, Gloria slipped back into position behind me. She took the initiative to patch things up with me, resuming her role as my dear friend and confidant. I couldn't be bothered to expose her charade. Let her put on her theatrical performance. I'll just enjoy the show, but our fake friendship finally fell apart after the second monthly exam results were posted. I still came in first, while she moved back up to second place from 7th, yet the score gap between us actually widened, from 30 points to 60. The class was buzzing with gossip again. Zoe, you're absolutely killing it, beating the second place by over 60 points. Are you the actual god of exams in human form? This is like bringing a gun to a knife fight. Have some mercy. How is second place supposed to feel about this? Oh, mighty exam deity, please accept our worship and bless our grades too. Even Gloria, skilled as she was at maintaining appearances, couldn't keep up her facade after hearing her classmates' comments. Her face was longer than a donkey's, glaring at me as if I were her mortal enemy. Seeing his precious daughter so upset, my dad, no, I mean Gloria's dad, Ken, started stirring up trouble too. That very night, he posted a video on the Most Beautiful Homeroom Teacher account. He openly claimed that although his daughter got good grades, she was just a bookworm, but the truly impressive one is the student who came in second. Even though their score was 60 points lower than the top students, they're accomplished in piano, painting, dance, and go, a truly well-rounded student. Finally, they made sure to encourage all students to become well-rounded learners in this new era. He used the money I earned to pamper his precious daughter, and now he has the nerve to imply I'm just a bookworm. Fine then, I'll study like my life depends on it and ace every exam. This is the only weapon I have left, and I'm not letting go of it. I'll strike at their hearts, one precise thrust at a time. I closed the video, pulled out my test papers, and buried myself in solving problems. Already getting restless. This is only the beginning. Ken's online trolling wasn't enough. Now he's taking things way too far. He constantly finds excuses to reprimand me and keeps sending me home for self-reflection over every little thing. He thought this would slow down my study progress, but he was wrong. I actually study more efficiently and make better progress at home. I guess I should thank him. Thanks to his special attention, I scored 709 points in the final mock exam and ranked second in the citywide joint examination. Ken and Gloria were completely dumbfounded, but they quickly changed their approach. If force didn't work, they'd try persuasion. One night 2 weeks before the college entrance exams, Ken didn't go to Grandma's house. He came home instead and made a point of stopping by my room. Zoe, would you consider skipping this year's college entrance exam? You're an excellent student. If you take it next year instead, you'll still get outstanding scores. My head snapped up as I stared at him in disbelief. Why on earth should I give it up? He sighed and continued, you've been putting a lot of academic pressure on Gloria. Her mental state has really deteriorated, and I'm worried her family is afraid she might do something drastic. 5. That's why they came to me. Zoe, you're a sensible and kind-hearted girl. Just think about it. I cut him off directly. I may be kind, but I'm not stupid. Her poor decisions are her own doing. I'm not to blame. She just lacks the ability to learn and the mental fortitude, and she's psychologically twisted. Why can't she just focus on being her best self? Why does everything have to be a competition? Right. Ken softened his tone. You're absolutely correct, and honestly, I Know that too, but her family is willing to compensate you with 200,000. Isn't your mother supposed to have heart surgery? Maybe you should think it over. His words made me laugh in disbelief. As my laughter faded, my eyes began to sting. So he knew my mother needed surgery and money. Then why didn't he use some of the earnings from that account to help with her medical expenses? What a hypocrite. My eyes turned cold. Teacher, have you forgotten? I'm also your student. How could you propose such an underhanded deal with me? Where is your professional ethics? Do you even deserve to be called an educator? Ken's face stiffened, then twisted into a vicious snarl as he shouted at me, who are you to judge whether I'm fit to be a teacher? But I have plenty of ways to prevent you from taking the college entrance exams. Is he threatening me? Does he still think my mother is some weak, submissive middle-aged woman? Does he still believe I'm that gentle, introverted girl who only reflects inwardly when faced with injustice? Too bad for him. I'm not the same girl from my past life anymore. At the college entrance exam rally, I took the stage as the student representative to deliver a speech. I turned on the voice recorder and held it up to the microphone. Zoe, would you consider withdrawing from this year's college entrance exam? Why would I ever give up? You've put Gloria under immense academic pressure. Her mental state has completely deteriorated, and I'm worried. Her family fears she might do something drastic. That's why they came to me. Zoe, you're such a sensible and kind-hearted girl. Perhaps you could. Gloria's family is willing to compensate you with 200,000 yuan. Isn't your mother scheduled for heart surgery? Maybe you should think it over. Teacher, have you forgotten? I'm also your student. How could you propose such a deal in private? Where's your professional ethics? Do you even deserve to be called an educator? Who are you to judge whether I'm fit to be a teacher? But I have plenty of ways to stop you from taking the college entrance exam. Ken's face contorted as he staggered onto the stage and lunged at me. You little bitch. How dare you set me up? I'll kill you. Stop him. The principal pointed at Ken and roared. Our school finally produced a student with potential for Tsinghua or Peking University, and you're making her give up the college entrance exam. I think you've had enough of this job. Principal, it's not what you think. I was just discussing with her about retaking the exam next year. Ken's face turned pale. Besides, I'm her father. This is a family matter. The audience erupted in boos and jeers. He was quickly escorted out by security. After that incident, his reputation was completely ruined. Moreover, he did indeed violate relevant regulations, and the impact was quite severe. He was fired that very day. Shortly after, a video of Ken with Gloria and her mother was also posted online. It didn't take long for the resourceful netizens to uncover more details. Piece by piece, the full story came together. When the truth came to light, the family of three became the target of public condemnation. The most beautiful homeroom teacher account was bombarded with relentless criticism from netizens. The most admirable homeroom teacher, what a joke. She's the most hypocritical and disgusting teacher I've ever seen, bar none. Damn. All that talk about donating the book sale profits to Hope Elementary turns out that shameless mother-daughter duo pocketed everything. What a sneaky scheme. I'm absolutely furious. My heart breaks for Zoe and her mom, being stuck with such a worthless man as a husband and father. They've had the worst luck imaginable. 6. I'm reporting his account for fraud and scamming people out of their money. Report this. An hour later, his account got suspended. My mother held me tight, tears streaming down her face. In this lifetime, Mom showed incredible courage. She picked up her camera and refused to let herself be mistreated any longer. A few days later, the college entrance exams arrived right on schedule. After finishing the exam, I walked out of the test center feeling completely weightless. Every bit of effort I'd put in paid off. This was hands down my best performance ever. Tsinghua and Peking University. This time it's in the bag. On the way home, my desk mate told me that Gloria was too overwhelmed to take the exam. Who's to blame for that? The next day, I went with my mom to file for divorce at the courthouse. After all the twists and turns, they ended up getting divorced since Ken had been misusing the marital assets for other purposes over a long period, violating Mom's legitimate rights. The court awarded the majority of the property to her. Their spacious apartment in Zhuoda community was also auctioned off that day. I happened to see them moving out of the neighborhood. The three of them were covered in dust and utterly dejected. Their pride, once wrapped in material possessions, now lay shattered on the ground. Midsummer, I received the admission letter from Peking University. Mom was beaming from ear to ear as she prepared a seafood feast in our new home to celebrate my achievement. Laughter filled our day from dawn till dusk. After cutting ties with that toxic person, our lives kept getting better. At the end of August, I embarked on my college journey alone. My mother had just had surgery and needed to rest in bed. I insisted on staying to take care of her, but she wouldn't hear of it, so I hired a caregiver to look after her in my place. My mother received a substantial amount of money in the divorce settlement. After I got into Peking University, I also received around 200,000 yuan in awards from the education department and some companies, so my finances became much more comfortable, just as I thought. I participated in a half-month military training at school. Then, my college life officially began. Bright classrooms, the nation's most outstanding teachers, and classmates who were all top scorers from their respective provinces and cities. I felt like I was living in a dream. I cherished my hard-won college life, making each day fulfilling by joining student clubs, participating in various competitions, and studying in the library on weekends. I also took taekwondo and sanda classes off campus, finally learning all the things I'd wanted to as a child but couldn't afford. I only occasionally heard about Gloria and Ken from my high school deskmate, but I had long since moved on, listening to their stories like they were anecdotes about strangers. Gloria not only missed the college entrance exam that year, but also couldn't take it in the following years, because she had suffered a mental breakdown. She went from being the apple of her parents' eye to a despised illegitimate child. The sheer magnitude of the fall was more than she could bear. Then again, she couldn't even handle the fact that my grades were better than hers, even when she was the runner-up, let alone such a massive life-altering blow. Not only had she lost the ability to learn, but she also began engaging in self-harm and violent behavior toward her parents. She kept crying out that she never should have been born, wondering why she had to come into this world just to be overshadowed by me. Through gritted teeth, she said she hated her parents. If it weren't for them, she wouldn't have been brought into this world to suffer such humiliation. Just as I graduated from Peking University, became a renowned screenwriter, and started trending frequently online. 7. Gloria completely lost her mind. She grabbed a kitchen knife, killed her own mother, and left Ken with severe injuries. While Gloria was being forcibly admitted to a psychiatric hospital, Ken was rushed into the emergency room. The hospital had already issued a critical condition notice, but I spent a fortune to bring in the country's top doctors and managed to pull him back from the brink. He's paralyzed from the waist down, his speech is slurred, and he'll be bedridden for the rest of his life. This was the best outcome the doctors had prepared me for from the start. I want him confined to that bed for whatever life he has left, suffering every day, filled with remorse every day, until he draws his last breath. I'm quite content with this living hell. This is what he owes me and Mom in our past life. He showed no hesitation when he caused Mom and me to die tragically. By the time I left the hospital, night had fallen. Parking at the hospital was tight, so I left my car in an outside lot and walked about 6 or 7 minutes. As I was passing through a quiet, deserted alley, suddenly, I heard footsteps behind me, about 10 meters away. They sounded different from normal footsteps, and oddly familiar. I was sure of it. The man was lame. I crouched down pretending to tie my shoelaces, then stood up and quickened my pace. But the person behind me lunged at me like a wild beast. In no time, we were tangled up together. He yanked off my jacket and tore the buttons from my shirt. A sinister voice, like a venomous snake, slithered into my ear. Zoe, this time you can't escape. I'm going to ruin you. Then you'll be dragged into the mud, just like me. Then we can finally be together. In my dazed state, the grotesque face seemed to shift, one moment resembling Ken, the next Gloria, as if 3 faces had merged into one. He's got a strong grip now, like he's been working out in prison. He forced my head down, but just as he was about to kiss me, I kicked him to the ground. He watched me slowly get up, then pulled out a knife with a creepy grin. I screamed and ran back to where I'd been crouching, grabbed my phone that was still recording, and bolted out of the alley toward the light. Hopefully this time, he'll be locked up for life. The end. In order to make a living, my wife and I opened a pork shop. It's a sweltering hot day, and strangely enough, all our regular customers are scrambling to buy cured bacon, while the fresh meat is completely ignored. This really is quite an unusual situation. 01. I run a pork shop in the local area, and it's a husband and wife business. The most sought-after items in our small shop aren't the fresh meats, but rather the old hams and cured bacon. Every year, when the autumn and winter seasons arrive and the northwest wind starts to blow, I begin to marinate a large quantity of cured bacon. To be honest, the taste of our cured bacon is truly exceptional, and it just gets more fragrant the longer it's stored. But this year is really strange. Usually, in summer, not many people buy cured bacon, yet this time it's selling like hotcakes. It's really quite baffling, and it's hard to make sense of this situation. Blaze, this regular customer of ours, actually wanted to buy up all the cured bacon in my stock, but I told him that there wasn't much left in stock. He insisted, asking me to make some for him even in summer, and he wanted a rather large quantity of course, I refused. Cured bacon made in summer just doesn't have the right taste, it's not as good, and we can't do anything to ruin our reputation. I thought that would be the end of it, but who would have thought that Blaze came back the next day? He immediately demanded 500 Gene of cured bacon. I told him that it couldn't be made in this season because the taste would be too poor. He stubbornly insisted on buying it, saying that his old father really liked this, and even if the taste was a bit off, it was still much better than that from other shops. I couldn't help but tease him. You shouldn't eat too much of it even if it's delicious. Experts have said that eating too much cured bacon can easily cause cancer. Blaze sneered disdainfully. Can you really believe those so-called experts? There's not a single word of truth coming out of their mouths. I smiled and turned down the air conditioning a few more degrees. You're right. This summer is so hot and humid, and those experts still say it's normal. They're just talking nonsense. Blaze nodded. The weather this year is indeed abnormal. We have to be more careful ourselves. How long will it take to make the cured bacon? About 14 days. Okay, that'll work. Also, prepare 200 Gene of lard for me. Blaze, what on earth are you going to do with all this? Can your family really consume so much? My old father loves it, so there's nothing I can do. All right, I'll deliver it to you along with the cured bacon when it's ready. All these regular customers are buying in incredibly large quantities, starting with enough to last a whole year at a time. The sales of fresh meat are still normal, but I just feel that something isn't quite right. 02. I have an old house in the mountains on the outskirts. The yard is really big, covering an area of 3 mu, and there's also a large cave. I make all these meat products in that cave. When I took the orders, I was overjoyed, thinking that I could make a lot of money this time, but when I started making them, I almost exhausted myself. The cave and the yard were filled with things. The quantity was almost the same as what I've made in the past few years combined. When I delivered the goods to Blaze's house, I was actually stopped by the doorman. Blaze lives in that villa area with more than 90 single-family villas. The people living there are all prominent figures in our area. Normally, someone like me, a familiar face, could enter freely, but today the doorman, Beckett, just wouldn't let me in. He insisted that the owner had to come out and pick up the goods in person. I got a bit angry and shouted at Beckett, Beckett, you've grown a temper in just a few days, haven't you? You're even stopping me. Beckett said seriously, Griffin, this is a new rule set by the Property Owners Committee. Don't make things difficult for me. Just call the owner quickly. There was nothing I could do, so I had to give Blaze a call soon enough. Blaze came out smiling and apologized to me. Griffin, I'm really sorry. The Property Owners Committee has a new rule that doesn't allow non-residents to enter. Please help me move the goods to my car. Like this, I made calls to several other customers one after another, and they all came out to pick up the goods in their cars personally. During this time, I also saw a large amount of daily necessities like rice, flour, and cooking oil being transported outside the community. Moreover, I noticed that the walls of the community had been heightened and reinforced, and there was even an electric fence installed. This really seems rather strange no matter how you look at it. After delivering the goods, I was so sore and tired that my back and legs ached. In the evening, when I talked about this with my wife, she also thought it was strange and said that there were many people who wanted to buy cured bacon today, but she didn't accept their orders. It's really exhausting. Later, I mentioned that our cured bacon and lard won't go bad even if they're stored for several years, especially that old cured bacon. The longer it's stored, the more flavorful it becomes. Could it be that something really is going to happen? My wife comforted me not to think too much. We've been so tired these days, so we should go to bed early. As long as my child and I are by her side, she's not afraid even if the sky were to fall. She then said, Honey, we've earned a lot these days. Let's replace the doors and windows of our building. It always lets in the wind in winter, and the child always complains about being cold. Since it's hot now, let's replace them with new ones and seal them properly. Sure, my wife, I'll go and take a look tomorrow morning. Let's not make cured bacon for a few days. It's tiring and hot, and the taste of the bacon made now won't be as good. We can't ruin our reputation. 03. The next day, I went to the building materials market, and it felt a bit deserted. I found Luca, who is in the decoration business. Speaking of Luca, he's from the same village as me, and we get along really well. His family is from a big household, which is quite different from our small family. There are more than 100 households in the village, and I've always been quite low-key. As soon as I entered his shop, I directly threw a pack of Gene Yulon cigarettes on the table. Luca picked up the cigarettes, smiled, and said, You're always so polite. Come on, have a taste of my tea. Brother, I walked over and sat down, took a sip of the tea, and then asked, Luca, why does it seem like there aren't many people here? Luca sighed, everyone has been sent out. It's really strange, actually. I've been so busy these days that I haven't had a moment's rest. There's still a great demand these days, but we can't get the goods in this small place now, and we can't take on new jobs, so it looks like there are fewer people around. I comforted him, it's good to be busy, after all. There's money to be made, we work hard just to have a cozy life. With our wives, children, and a warm bed, right? What kind of jobs have been keeping you so busy? Lucas said. I really can't understand what those rich people are thinking. Their houses are perfectly fine, but they insist on adding insulation layers. Recently, the building materials market around here has run out of stock, and we can't even order materials from the manufacturers. I thought it was a bit strange. Is the demand really that high? Didn't you ask the owners what was going on? Lucas shrugged. Who knows, they just said that their houses were cold and drafty last winter. Some people even added an extra layer to their windows and wanted to seal them properly. I frowned. Luca, don't you think this is a bit strange? Luca waved his hand. What's so strange about it? Those rich people have too much money and don't know what to do with it. They can spend it however they like. By the way, what did you come to see me for? That's when I remembered the main thing. Well, my building also lets in the cold wind in winter. I was thinking about adding some insulation materials and replacing the doors and windows or something. For your building, don't worry, I'll send someone to take a look at your place later, Lucas said as he picked up the cigarette on the table, lit it, and took a deep puff. But Luca, didn't you just say that the building materials are out of stock now? I asked, feeling a bit puzzled. Luca exhaled a puff of smoke and smiled. Brother, those rich people are asking for high-grade materials that can withstand extremely low temperatures of -60 to 70 degrees Celsius. Even the doors and windows are made of special materials that are explosion-proof and resistant to low temperatures. What do we ordinary folks need such luxurious things for? Luca, the lowest temperature here in previous years was only -20 degrees Celsius. Why would they need materials that can withstand such low temperatures? I furrowed my brow. Luca waved his hand and said casually, what's so strange about it? Maybe those rich people think this place is like the Antarctic, -70 degrees Celsius. It's all because they have too much money to burn. I'll send someone to contact you later and go to your place to take a look in person. Then we can figure out the most cost-effective way to do it according to the actual situation. Okay, Luca, then I'll be waiting for your call. I nodded and left Luca's shop with a bit of doubt in my heart. I always feel that something is going to happen in 04. I decided to check out several local high-end villa areas. Along the way, I noticed that the walls of many villa areas were being reinforced. Some of the reinforcement work had already been completed, making the walls look extremely sturdy. Outside each community, logistics vehicles were shuttling back and forth busily, constantly unloading and loading goods. This bustling scene made the doubts in my heart even stronger. When I drove past a particularly high-end villa area, I found a lot of black cinders scattered on the road. Out of curiosity, I stopped the car and walked closer to take a look. To my surprise, they were actually coal cinders. Nowadays, even in rural areas, burning coal is gradually being phased out, so why would these high-end villa areas buy a large amount of coal? Looking at the coal cinders scattered on the road, I guessed that the amount of coal they bought must be quite substantial. This discovery made me even more confused. At the same time, it made me realize that the residents of these high-end villa areas seemed to be preparing for something that was about to happen. With a heart full of doubts, I received a call from my wife. Griffin, my elder sister is back from the capital. Bring a few dishes back tonight. Wasn't our elder sister working as a nanny in the capital? It's not a holiday now. Why did she come back? I asked, feeling puzzled. Who knows? She said that the owner's family is going to renovate the house and let her come back to rest for a while in advance. They even gave her 3 months' salary in advance and told her to go back after the house renovation is finished, my wife explained. In the evening, when I saw my elder sister, I asked her curiously, Elder sister, your employer is really nice to give you a few months paid leave. That's right, the owner's family is really good. They gave me 3 months pay. Some employers only give 1 month's pay, or even no pay at all, my elder sister replied. Hearing my elder sister's description, the doubts in my heart grew deeper. What's going on? Could it be that all the nannies in your area were asked to come back? More or less, anyway. Quite a few people were given a vacation. They said they were going to carry out renovation on the old residential areas, which would take a few months, my elder sister explained. I felt that things were not that simple, so I continued to ask, are the villa areas also going to have the old residential area renovation? Who knows? Anyway, it has nothing to do with me. I get paid and don't have to work. That's great, my elder sister didn't seem to care about the reason. Seeing that my elder sister didn't want to talk more about it, I didn't press further. I could only echo, "That's true. You haven't seen your husband and child for a long time, have you? I'll send you home tomorrow." That night, lying in bed, I tossed and turned, always feeling that something was going to happen. These rich people are acting so strangely in every way. 05, in the dead of night, a sudden shattering sound of glass pierced through the stillness, jolting me awake from my sleep. The air was filled with a bone-chilling cold that made one's hair stand on end. I looked around and was horrified to find my wife standing there motionless, holding our child in her arms. Their bodies seemed to have become stiff, and no matter how much I called out to them, there was not the slightest response. I trembled as I walked towards them, my heart filled with overwhelming fear and despair. I reached up my hand and gently touched my wife's cheek. All I felt was an icy coldness seeping through my fingertips. Suddenly, her body cracked under my touch, as if the fragile ice layer had been shattered. Then her entire body began to break apart, turning into countless ice crystals that scattered to the ground. The sight in front of me made me scream in horror. I stumbled backward and fell to the ground. I struggled to get up, only to find that my hands were tightly stuck to the floor. I tried my best to pull them away, but the floor seemed to have stuck to my hands, making it impossible for me to move. I was horrified to find that I was being swallowed up by the floor, and I was being frozen into ice along with its coldness. My hands gradually lost their sensation, becoming stiff and cold. I fought with all my might to break free, but the coldness of the floor became more and more intense, as if it were going to swallow me whole. I screamed in terror, but my voice was swallowed up by the icy air and couldn't be heard. Just then, a series of urgent calls pulled me back to reality. I suddenly opened my eyes and found myself lying in bed, my clothes soaked in sweat. It turned out to be just a dream. I got up and sat by the bedside, still filled with lingering fear. "Did you have a nightmare?" my wife asked worriedly. I comforted my wife and then went to the balcony alone to smoke. I still couldn't calm down from the fear and despair I had just experienced. I had no more. The next day, after sending my elder sister off, I returned to the pork shop, took stock of the inventory, closed the shop, and then took my wife back to our old house. 06. The journey to the old house wasn't very far, just a few dozen kilometers. I was still haunted by the nightmare from last night, but I didn't dare to tell my wife about it for fear that she would worry. On the way, my wife noticed that I didn't look right and asked with concern, "Griffin, is there something wrong back at our hometown?" "No. I suspect that there might be extreme weather this year. Let's go back and take stock of things and make some preparations," I said. My wife didn't seem to care at all and said, "Extreme weather, you must be tired. Stop imagining things. Everything is fine, isn't it, wife? I'm really okay. I'm just a bit worried. Why did all those regular customers come to buy so much old cured bacon and lard this year?" My wife couldn't help but laugh. "Griffin, stop imagining things. Our cured bacon is delicious, and the lard is fragrant too. They probably want to stock up more. You know, these days, there aren't many delicious things to be found." I frowned, still feeling uneasy, and said, "Wife, don't you think it's strange that these regular customers suddenly bought so much cured bacon and lard all at once? But no matter what, they shouldn't be buying hundreds of gin at a time. We've been doing this business every year, and those regular customers usually only buy a few dozen gin at a time. This time, the amount they bought is 10 times more than usual. There must be something going on here." I paused and then continued, "And there's also the matter of our elder sister coming back from the capital. Don't you think it's strange? She's working as a nanny in a high-end villa area. Now she says that the whole community is going to have an old residential area renovation and they send all the nannies home. I just don't believe it, even if there really is going to be a renovation. Don't the old people and children at home need someone to take care of them? I guess they sent the nannies home because they're afraid that some information might leak out." My wife looked confused and said, "Stop imagining things. To store it for a long time, then why don't they just buy fresh pork and freeze it and eat it slowly?" I smiled and replied, "Wife, have we ever eaten that kind of pork that has been frozen for a long time? That kind of meat loses its taste and nutrition after being frozen for a long time. It tastes like zombie meat and no one would like it. I always feel that there might be some problems with food in the future. We still have to go back to the old house and take a look, and stock up on some grains and things first." My wife still didn't quite understand and said, "Even if there's something wrong, I think the city should be safer than the countryside, right?" I shook my head and said, "Wife, there are so many people and so much going on in the city. If something really happens, we ordinary people will be in a real fix. In the countryside, there's more space, fewer people, and it's easier to be self-sufficient." My wife was a bit worried and asked, "Then what about the child? If we both go back to our hometown, who will pick up the child from school?" I replied, "Let's go back and take a look first, figure out what we have at the old house and what we're lacking. Then we'll come back. We won't open the meat shop for now." I'll move all the goods we've purchased these days to the old house and make them into cured bacon for storage. My wife was still a bit worried and said, should we tell our elder sister about this so that they can also make some preparations? I waved my hand and said, wife, this is really hard to say, we're not sure yet. If something really happens, elder sister and the others will definitely blame us for not telling them earlier. If nothing happens in the end, elder sister will say that we scared her and made her worry for nothing. Right now, we're just making guesses. It's better not to tell them, so as not to end up in an awkward situation. 07 At present, the supplies at home are as follows. There are 3 large freezers, there is one 10 kW diesel generator, there is a certain amount of diesel reserves, but diesel doesn't work well at low temperatures, it's likely to freeze if it's cold. We need to change to a gasoline generator. There is a cellar, and the entrance is inside the house. Generally, the temperature difference between the cellar and the ground is only about 10 degrees. The house is newly renovated. Because the house is on a hillside, it's quite cold in winter, so when renovating, we were quite generous with the materials. The walls are thicker than those of old-fashioned buildings, the glass is double-layered, and the doors and windows are made of broken bridge aluminum. The walls also have an insulation layer. The traditional heated Kong and fire walls have also been retained. Personally, I think if this house can't withstand the low temperature, the buildings in the city have even less chance. There are solar panels on the roof. After all, it's a rural area in the mountains, and the power supply is not stable. The fuel generator and the solar panels are the guarantees of electricity supply. There are 3 bedrooms and a large living room. There are 2 auxiliary rooms, as well as an independent kitchen, bathroom, and boiler room. Inside the house, there are heated Kangs, firewalls, and heating installed. There is no lack of daily household appliances, since I often come here to process pork. There are TVs, refrigerators, washing machines, and other appliances for daily life. It's cool in the mountains, so there's no air conditioner. The large yard covers an area of 3 mu, surrounding a large cave on the halfway up the hillside and a small factory building, where the diesel generator, freezers, and some sundries are placed. There are wells in both the factory building and the main house, which are commonly known as Old Man's Joy and can be used to collect groundwater. Grain reserves. There is some grain stored in the cellar, including 150 gin of rice, 200 gin of flour, 300 gin of sweet potatoes, and a certain amount of oil and salt. There are also some tobacco and alcohol for daily visits with relatives. After all, I'm from a rural background, and I have the habit of storing grain. There are also several jars of loose liquor brewed in the village. All of these are the aftermath of the pandemic. The cellar has a large space and is very dry. There are at least 200 gin of old cured bacon and old hams. These are the goods that we've stored for our own family to eat for several years. There are also dozens of kilograms of lard. There are 2 big dogs in the yard, Black and its wife Yellow, who guard the house. The fence is quite tall, and there is barbed wire on it. My wife and I took stock and were a bit confused. We didn't know what kind of disaster would happen either. We felt that we didn't lack anything, and it was ready for us to move in at any time. For now, we're just making preparations for a relatively long winter. We initially consider using 1 bag of 50 gin of rice and 1 bag of 50 gin of flour per month, considering that the shelf life of rice is only 18 months and the shelf life of flour is 12 months. We plan to store 18 bags of rice and 12 bags of flour. We plan to buy some vegetables that can be stored for a long time. We're not sure if summer cabbages can be stored well, so we don't dare to buy them, so we still prefer to buy some commonly stocked foods like instant noodles, self-heating pots, compressed biscuits, and various dried foods. We also need to secretly buy some coal because the gas supply may not be available. The most precious supply for heating is coal. How can people in city buildings use it? Install a big boiler in a building? That's ridiculous to deal with extreme weather. This old house is more suitable. We can do whatever we want here. In previous years, we burned less than 3 tons of coal in the 4 winter months. This year, we'll buy more, but we need to rely on connections to buy it. Let's try to get 12 tons first and then try to get as much as possible. We have enough space at home, so we can store it all. As long as there is enough coal to burn, we definitely won't freeze to death. The more coal, the better. We also need to store some gasoline and diesel, but if we buy them personally, we can't buy a large amount. We'll just buy as much as we can. We also need to store some engine oil and spare parts for the fuel engines. The engine oil needs to be changed every 200 hours, so we need to prepare more engine oil. After considering these supplies, we're still a bit confused. After all, we're just making preparations based on guesses. Disastrous weather can be extremely cold, extremely hot, floods, earthquakes. Currently, it's extremely hot, but I'm more inclined to think that extreme cold weather will occur in the future. It's unknown when it will appear and how long it will last. Also, I suddenly thought of something. As the saying goes, an ordinary man is innocent, but possessing wealth can be his downfall. If a big disaster occurs and I'm the only one who has stocked up so many things, and I'm a small family in this village, then those big families in the village will surely try to take everything from me like hungry wolves. At noon, we had a big meal at the old house, my wife and I checked everything at home. The bedding and other things were all in good condition, and we had a delicious meal. After the meal, I asked my wife to drive back to the city to buy medicine. I specifically told her to buy a lot of commonly used medicine, so as not to end up in a situation like during the pandemic when we couldn't buy it even if we wanted to. As for me, I was thinking about how to get the villagers involved in the preparations together, so as not to become someone else's target. I think after the pandemic, the villagers should have stored some grain at home. There should be no problem with food in the short term. And there is also a deep well in the village for drinking water. I'm just worried that if it's extremely cold, without making preparations in advance, there will be big problems with heating. Throughout history, in which natural disaster wasn't human disaster even more terrifying, stocking up things secretly definitely won't work. We still need to get a group of people to do it together in order to save our own lives. Only when those big families have everything they need will our small families be able to keep our things. During times of great disaster, what we should be most wary of is people's hearts. People's hearts are often like this. They envy you when you have something and look down on you when you don't. It's okay if social order doesn't collapse, but once social order collapses, these feelings will be magnified infinitely. 08. We can't just approach them directly, we need to ask Lennox to step in for this matter. Speaking of Lennox, this name isn't given casually. Lennox is original name is Quinn. He's over 80 years old, but he's still in good health. He had a long friendship with my grandfather. This old man has been on the battlefield and has seen a lot of the world. He has a straightforward personality and a very high prestige in the village. I've always had a good relationship with him. Whenever I have something to ask him, he will always give me advice. He used to be the village head for a few years, and there's nothing in the village that he doesn't know. I'm going to find Lennox and discuss this with him to see what he thinks. If Lennox thinks there's something wrong with this, with his word, the villagers will definitely think twice. As a veteran, he always speaks directly and doesn't beat around the bush. I carried 2 bottles of strong liquor and went straight to Lennox's house. The old man knew exactly what was going on and knew that I must have something to talk about. He's always been straightforward, so he directly told me to speak my mind and not beat around the bush in front of him. So I told Lennox everything I had seen and heard in the city's villa areas, the situation in my shop, and the matter of my elder sister who works as a nanny, all in detail. After listening, Lennox frowned and pondered for a moment. Then he said, "This matter seems to be quite serious. You were right to come to me. You can't be the one to deal with this. You go back first. I'll go find Dorian, our village head, who is also Quinn's nephew, and ask him to take the lead. You just pretend that you don't know anything and secretly make your preparations." Hearing what Lennox said, I immediately felt more at ease. Before I left, Lennox added another reminder. "You're so thoughtless, just bringing wine and not any cured bacon. Don't do this next time." I quickly replied, "Lennox, don't worry, there will definitely be enough cured bacon for you." I don't know how things were arranged on their side, but Lennox is really decisive and has great prestige. After dinner in the evening, I was wondering how things would develop when the village head Dorian called. "Griffin, gather at the village committee at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. No excuses. Those who are nearby have to come back. We won't talk about those who are far away for now." Uncle, I'm right in the village. Is there something wrong?" The village head said sternly. "Don't ask what you shouldn't. Just be there on time." After hanging up the phone, I secretly gave Lennox a thumbs up in my heart. He's really reliable. The next morning, I arrived at the village committee on time and found that the village head and Lennox were already there. Several of us who do business in the nearby city were also called back. The village head slammed the door shut and then started scolding. "You little rascals, you only know how to make money outside. You haven't come back to visit the old people at home for so long. Have you forgotten your roots? Do you still want to stay in this village?" Dorian stared at Luca and said, "I heard that you haven't come back to see your father for more than 2 months. What big money are you making that you don't even care about your father?" Luca quickly defended himself. "Uncle, it's not that I don't want to come back. This year's business is really strange. Some people want explosion-proof doors and windows, and some want super strong insulation. All of them are based on the standard of -70 degrees Celsius. My shop's technology couldn't keep up. I was training my workers while working. I was really busy all the time." When Luca said this, everyone started chatting and arguing noisily. Elijah, who is in the logistics business, also chimed in. "This year is really strange. Those rich people are buying things by the truckload. I even suspect that their houses are about to be filled up." Zeke, who is in the clothing and had wholesale business, also complained. In the middle of summer, there are very few people buying summer clothes. Everyone is ordering cold-proof clothes. Isn't this crazy? It's the off-season for cold-proof clothes, but this year it's like the peak season. I couldn't help but interrupt. I also think it's strange. The most popular things bought in my shop are old cured bacon and other foods that can be stored for a long time. Soren, who runs a chain of pharmacies, also scratched his head and said, "There have been a lot more people coming to the pharmacy to buy medicine recently. It's really strange." Knox, the foreman, also continued, "The work in the villa areas is also very strange. They all require the walls to be heightened and reinforced, and an electric fence to be installed, and the construction period is very urgent, as if they're in a hurry for something." Everyone was talking one after another, all expressing the same meaning: preparing for cold weather, stocking up on food and medicine, and preventing riots. The village head then made phone calls to other villagers who were doing business in big cities. The result was the same. There was a strange atmosphere everywhere, and it was all about preparing for cold weather, stocking up, and preventing riots. The room suddenly fell silent. Everyone could feel that something big was about to happen, but they just didn't know exactly what it was. Finally, the village head broke the silence and looked at Lennox, saying, "Uncle, you have the most prestige. What do you think we should do about this?" 09, Lennox said decisively, "I have a hunch that something big is going to happen. Preparing cold-proof clothes and buying insulation supplies indicate that it will be very cold in winter. Preventing riots implies that there may be social unrest. We don't know exactly what will happen, but it's always better to make preparations. Those who can come back to the village should be called back. We won't force those who don't want to come back. Those families with poor conditions can move to live in the village committee. The village committee will also store grain and reinforce the houses, adding heated kangs and firewalls for cold protection. What do you all think?" Everyone nodded in agreement and had no objections. Disasters themselves are not the most terrifying thing. What's really terrifying is the unrest that follows social chaos. Therefore, we must unite and face it together. The truth is simple, but not everyone has the courage and charisma like Lennox. I added, "Lennox, the drastic change in the weather may not wait until winter. According to our analysis just now, it may happen within the next month or two. We also need to consider the construction period and set a time limit." Luca responded, "Currently, all the projects are required to be completed within a month. If we can't finish on time, the owners are even willing to increase the payment on their own initiative, so it should be about a month from now." Hearing this news, the room fell silent again. Then Lennox broke the silence. "Then we'll make preparations based on a 1-month time limit. Those who can come back should try their best to come back. Call the heads of each family to a meeting. This matter must not be spread outside. In addition, I'm willing to contribute 50,000 yuan to do my part. I'll also move to live in the village committee at that time." Lennox's statement played a leading role. Several villagers from small families also expressed their willingness to contribute money and effort. 30,000 yuan, 50,000 yuan, 100,000 yuan. I also contributed 100,000 yuan. After all, it was me who encouraged Lennox to step forward, not for anything else, but out of admiration for Lennox's sense of responsibility. The most generous one was Soren, who runs the pharmacy. He excitedly expressed that he was willing to contribute 500,000 yuan and would immediately arrange to send the inventory from the pharmacy back to the village. He really went all out. Lennox is saving everyone's lives, although nothing has happened yet, and Soren is still safe. Once something happens, as the richest person in the village, he will become an easy target. If everyone makes preparations in advance and has hope of survival, then Soren will be safe in the village. We just need to be on guard against people from other villages. At the same time, I also guess that Soren might know more than we do. After all, he's in the pharmaceutical business and has more connections. Maybe he just doesn't dare to say it." So everyone started to act separately. Zeke began to arrange to send the cold-proof clothes from the shop back to the village. Elijah used a large truck to transport the supplies. I also promised to make a large amount of cured bacon for the villagers. Lucas started to transfer the construction team back to the village to first renovate the house of the village committee, reinforce the insulation facilities, and then build heated kangs, firewalls, and even earth-cone floor heating. I felt that everyone had already noticed something was wrong, but no one dared to point it out and no one dared to talk about it. They were all secretly making preparations now. With Lennox as the backbone, they dared to take action openly. Then, in the name of the village committee, we began to sort out the reserve list. How many people were there in the village, how much grain, fuel, power generation, and water storage were needed, and so on. Although we asked everyone not to spread the news, how could it not be spread? The village is a place where there are a lot of people. And a lot of gossip. Soon, the news spread. Some people laughed at our village, and some people came to our village to try to get some information and learn from us. In short, there were all kinds of people. Our village was relatively united. After all, there was a prestigious person like Lennox. He was from a big family in the village, and the people from small families didn't dare to cause trouble. The people from big families, who were all Lennox's juniors, also didn't dare to cause trouble. Occasionally, there were a few people who were lazy and tried to cheat, but these were small matters and couldn't cause much of a commotion. For small families, they could just focus on preparing for the natural disaster. At least they didn't have to worry too much about being bullied after the natural disaster. The villagers had stocked up enough food, so there was no need to fight over it. The most surprising and admirable person was still Lennox. Lennox secretly arranged for a few people to get a lot of gunpowder. Lennox also secretly gave me a homemade shotgun. This old man really has connections. He was preparing for the possibility that someone might cause trouble in the future. But is the disaster really just extremely cold weather? What if the extremely cold weather doesn't come? Lennox will have to bear the anger of the villagers. 10. I chose to stay and live in the old house. I had my own plans. My old house had an excellent location and a high terrain. It was located in the deepest part of the village and backed onto a mountain. If there really was any unrest, I would have more time to deal with it. In the house in the city, I also placed some drinking water and food and other daily necessities. Not much. Just as a thought for my old neighbors, I couldn't say this directly, but if my neighbors were short of supplies, they would definitely break into my old house. I hope it can help some people. There are some things that can be done, but not said. People's hearts are unpredictable. For the renovation of my old house, in addition to sealing and insulating the house itself, I also added a heated earth con, floor heating, and reinforced the cellar. The cellar was the last resort. After all, the cellar was 4 to 5 meters deep. Even in the worst case, it was thicker than the walls of the house. Right, I also prepared a pedal generator, medicine, and so on. I also piled a large part of the coal and firewood indoors. My wife also specially prepared a lot of nutrient soil. I have to admire the wisdom of women. It will bring great joy to our life in the future. There was no change outside the village, except for rumors of the construction of underground fortifications in various places. Social order was still relatively stable. I have to give credit to the country for this, because the weather was getting hotter and hotter. There were more and more rumors in the village. Some people began to speak ill of Lennox behind his back. Lennox didn't care at all. He still demanded that the house of the village committee be further reinforced and the insulation and warmth retention be strengthened. Lennox took the lead and moved in first. 11. At night, the quiet village was surrounded by the deep darkness, with only a few stars twinkling in the sky. I walked outside, intending to get some fresh air, but the scene in front of me left me instantly stunned. The sky seemed to be gently waved by colorful ribbons. Green, purple, and red light bands were jumping and intertwining in the air, like a carnival dance in heaven. I had never seen such a beautiful and mysterious scene before. It felt a bit like the aurora I had seen on TV, and I couldn't help but be mesmerized. Just then, strings of sparks burst out from the high-voltage power line tower in the distance, like ignited fireworks, extremely dazzling in the night sky. The lights in the village went out one by one, and the surroundings were plunged into darkness, leaving only the colorful light bands in the sky still dancing. I tried to take out my phone to check what was going on, but found that the phone screen was black and wouldn't respond no matter how I pressed it. Suddenly, a hissing and crackling noise came from the village radio, like the interference caused by unstable current, which made people feel annoyed. All kinds of strange phenomena began to occur in the village one after another. Cars suddenly sounded their alarms, and the headlights flickered on and off, as if echoing the light bands in the sky. The TV screen at home inexplicably turned on and flashed with snowflakes. My heart was filled with doubts and fear. I didn't know what the connection was between this beautiful dance in the sky and these strange phenomena, but I could feel that this peaceful night had been completely changed. With the failure of various electronic devices, the villagers began to panic. They all came out of their houses to check what was happening. When they looked up at the sky, they were all deeply attracted by the magnificent scene. For a moment, the village was in a state of panic, and everyone was guessing what was going on. The power supply was cut off, the communication was interrupted, and the generator was burned out. The village became an information island. The expected extremely cold weather did not come as scheduled. Instead, a wave of heat accompanied by sudden and strange phenomena arrived. The villagers' lives fell into chaos. It was extremely hot and unbearable, and the anger in the villagers' hearts was even more difficult to contained. They angrily gathered in front of the village committee, venting their dissatisfaction towards Lennox. Lennox, look at what's going on. All our electrical appliances are destroyed, and you have to be responsible, roared Jagger, a burly man. His face was red with anger, and his eyes were wide open as he stared at Lennox. The others were also enraged. They waved their arms and kept cursing. In their opinion, Lennox should be fully responsible for this disaster. Their selfishness and ignorance were fully exposed at this moment. They only cared about their own losses. In the face of the villagers' accusations and abuse, Lennox remained calm. He took a deep breath and prepared to explain. However, the villagers didn't want to listen to his explanation. They just wanted to find someone to vent their anger on, someone to take the blame just when the tense atmosphere was about to trigger a conflict. I struggled to push through the crowd. I picked up the homemade shotgun, pulled the trigger towards the sky, and there was a loud bang. This gunshot instantly suppressed the villagers' anger, and the scene suddenly fell silent. I stood in front of Lennox, holding the shotgun tightly in my hand, and shouted loudly, "Whoever dares to take another step forward, try it." Jagger said disdainfully to me, "Griffin, what are you getting involved in? This is our family's business. You're an outsider, so stay out of it." Although I knew that Jagger was a jerk and a rascal, I didn't expect that in the face of interests, he would dare to be so arrogant and provoke Lennox. I didn't respond, but just pointed the muzzle of the gun at him silently. Seeing this, Jagger flinched and didn't dare to act rashly anymore. Lennox was very calm. He motioned for me to step aside and then said contemptuously to Jagger, "Jagger, who do you think you are? Call your father here. You're not qualified to act arrogantly here." Jagger retorted unyieldingly, "Lennox, you could have let everyone prepare in advance, but now we've suffered heavy losses. Don't you think you should give us an explanation?" Jagger's few lackeys also chimed in, "That's right, we all did as Lennox told us to do. Lennox, you have to be responsible for our losses." I was filled with anger. These people were really shameless. Lennox remained unmoved. He took the homemade shotgun from my hand and aimed it at the wooden stick in the hand of one of Jagger's lackeys. With a bang, the wooden stick broke in two. The young man was so scared that he wet his pants, and his face turned pale. This gunshot completely intimidated the scene. He held the gun and asked coldly, "I didn't hear clearly just now. Who wants to tell me exactly what's going on?" Surprisingly, no one came forward to speak. At this time, the voice of the village head Dorian came from the crowd. "Everyone, calm down. Please listen to me for a moment." The villagers started whispering again. The cold protection and reinforcement were decisions made by the village committee, and it has nothing to do with Lennox personally. The damage to the electrical appliances today is entirely due to the natural disaster, which is beyond human control, said Dorian. The villagers were still not satisfied and demanded a clear solution from the village. In the face of the villagers' intense emotions, Dorian made a promise. Regarding the losses caused to everyone by the cold protection and reinforcement, the village will be fully responsible for compensation. The damage to the electrical appliances today is purely due to the natural disaster and has nothing to do with Lennox. The village will do its best to assist everyone in issuing certificates, handling insurance claims, or reporting the situation to the higher authorities, and will try its best to strive for more compensation for everyone. Hearing that there was hope for compensation, the villagers gradually calmed down, and the scene gradually returned to order. Just then, Jagger's father finally showed up. He grabbed Jagger's ear hard and dragged him all the way in front of Lennox, and apologized to Lennox. Jagger's father had a face full of guilt and apology, and kept bowing and apologizing, saying that he would discipline his son well. After this series of twists and turns, the matter was finally truly resolved. However, the behavior of Jagger and his father made me extremely disgusted. 12. It was only a few days later that we learned that the largest solar electromagnetic storm in history had occurred. The power supply and communication had all been damaged to varying degrees. It would still take a considerable amount of time to restore the communication and power supply, and most of the civilian electrical appliances and equipment had been damaged. Many villagers had their own thoughts, and they were no longer enthusiastic about the cold protection arrangements. However, Lennox still led a group of people to continue repairing the house of the village committee. He even felt that what had been done so far was far from enough. Lennox was also arranging for people to repair the generators and other machinery in the village, but the progress was not optimistic. Some people also left the village, but these people didn't know that an even greater disaster was really about to come. For days before the disaster occurred, the temperature suddenly soared. The sun hung high in the sky like a ball of fire, as if it was going to melt the whole world. People walking under the scorching sun felt as if they were being roasted by flames. There was dissatisfaction and anxiety in the village. Some people began to blame Lennox again, as if he could control the weather. 3 days before the disaster, the heat did not subside but became even more intense. The place where people lived in the village committee became extremely hot. Some people chose to move back to their own homes because they couldn't stand such an environment. People's hearts became even more scattered. 2 days before the disaster, the heat wave raged even more Even in the shade, there was no sense of coolness. The wind carried a burning temperature. To make matters worse, some villagers found that the wells in their homes had dried up. Lennox took the lead in stockpiling water decisively, but his action attracted the criticism of some villagers. They complained and doubted Lennox's motives to his face. I went to the village committee again and asked Lennox to come to my place. Lennox refused. Lennox insisted on staying in the village committee. When I got home, I also started to stockpile as much water as possible. Fortunately, both of my old man's joy wells could still draw water. One day before the disaster, the sun was still scorching hot, but there was a strange silence all around. The chirping of birds and the sounds of insects in the mountains and forests had all disappeared, leaving only a deathly stillness. This oppressive atmosphere made more people choose to leave. Some people who had left before also returned to the village and brought shocking news from the city. The army was transferring a large number of residents. This news caused a great stir in the village. However, the tense atmosphere and the questioning of Lennox also reached their peak at the same time. Lennox completely ignored these negative voices. My wife, my child, and I all stayed at home and did not go out. The two big dogs were also lying in the house. On the day of the incident, the temperature rose again, the sun was blazing, and the sunlight was so intense that it could almost melt everything. No one dared to stay outdoors for a long time, otherwise their skin would probably be burned. Some of the young people in the village were provoked by the heat and became dissatisfied again. They began to try to incite everyone to demand an explanation from Lennox, believing that all of this was Lennox's fault. Those brazen young people, not knowing the limits of their abilities, were wandering outside the village committee. They gathered outside the village committee with ill intentions, attempting to cause trouble and disrupt the order of the village to gain their own self-interests. Unfortunately, they simply couldn't withstand the invasion of the intense heat. Unable to endure the high temperature, they were defeated one by one after a short while and slunk away like stray dogs. At noon, the mountains and forests became even quieter, as if the whole world had held its breath. At this moment, there was not even a trace of wind or a sound. This kind of stillness made people feel an indescribable fear. It was terrifyingly quiet. Suddenly, an intermittent sound came from the radio. Zizla, these days by the solar electromagnetic storm, a lot of communication equipment destroyed, is still being gradually repaired. Zizla, communication may still be interrupted at any time. Please do not go out at home. Is expected to appear extreme cold weather. Zizla, please stay indoors. Do not go out to pay attention to prevent extreme cold weather. The radio repeated this several times, and then the signal seemed to be interrupted again. The sound of Zizizi returned. The villagers laughed. In such a hot day, which fool was pretending to say that there would be extremely cold weather? Many villagers didn't believe it, and some even went to the mountains to enjoy the cool. I checked all the things again to ensure that I could light the stove at any time. I checked all the cold-proof clothes again. It was so hot that I broke out in a sweat while checking these. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I was awakened by the continuous barking of Black and Yellow. The child was scared and started crying, and my wife was comforting the child. There was fear in Black's eyes as it stared outside and barked wildly. I suddenly felt a chill and shivered all over. There was a cracking sound outside. There was also the sound of the glass in the room breaking. Damn it, the ground in the yard is freezing, I shouted. The ground was visibly freezing rapidly and moving towards the house. I shouted to my wife, "You and the child go to the cellar quickly." I quickly started to light the fire on my side. The gasoline for the stove was already prepared, and the fire was lit immediately. It even burned a large patch of my hair. I called Black over. I quickly closed the door of the house. The fire was lit, but the speed at which the ground was freezing didn't stop. Ice also appeared on the roof and slowly pressed down towards me. There was fear in Black's barking. Black's wife had already been dragged to the cellar by my wife. I didn't have time to think too much. Although the fire in the stove was lit, it still needed time to warm up. I just lit a fire directly in the room. I couldn't care too much. First, I had to avoid being frozen to death. There was firewood prepared in advance in the room. I carried a bundle and placed it in the middle of the room, poured gasoline on it, and then lit it. The flames shot up instantly. Although it was dangerous, I felt that the speed at which the ice on the wall was spreading downwards had decreased, but the ice was still slowly spreading downwards. Then I heard a clear click. The thermometer on the wall cracked. The lowest temperature that thermometer could measure was -30°C. I added some more firewood to the fire on the ground. The fire in the coal stove finally burned vigorously. At this time, I felt a little more relaxed. Only then did I realize that my body was aching from the cold. My wife came out of the cellar and put a fur coat on me, telling me to go into the cellar quickly. I saw that the fire had risen, and at least the coal stove wouldn't go out, so I pulled my wife and Black and we all got into the cellar together. My wife and the child were already fully dressed for warmth, looking like big balls. There was no stove in the cellar, but there was a stove above the cellar. The cold air shouldn't penetrate easily, and it was 4 to 5 meters deep. I put on my cold-proof clothes in The cellar, I told the child and my wife to stay down there properly. The child had stopped crying, but was also a bit dazed. I guess he was a bit frightened. I had to go up and guard the stove. The stove couldn't be allowed to go out. It was the hope for our whole family. If the fire in the stove went out, our whole family would be finished. My wife, with tears in her eyes, held onto me tightly and sobbed, not wanting me to go up, but I had no choice but to go up. It said that after 10 years of marriage, a kiss between a couple can turn a nightmare into a series of good dreams, but still, I hugged my wife and kissed her on the cheek. This woman was rather strange. Instead of kicking me, she just said, "Come down quickly if there's any situation. If we're going to die, let's die together as a family. The child and I will be waiting for you in the cellar." When I went back to the ground again, a large area around the walls of the room was already covered in ice. However, the heated Kong and the firewall were still working well. They didn't have ice on them, but they were making pop 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 sounds. I didn't know if the bricks would break under the extremely cold weather. I was really worried. I was afraid that the bricks wouldn't be able to withstand the drastic change in temperature and would break. With my limited scientific knowledge, these traditional methods still carried a great deal of risk. The windows of this room had been sealed up in advance, otherwise the window glass would definitely have broken. Who could have imagined that the temperature would drop so suddenly and drastically? The lowest temperature marked on the thermometer was -30°C. The thermometer had already been frozen and cracked, which meant that the temperature just now was far lower than -30°C. The fire in the coal stove was burning more and more vigorously, and there was no sign of it going out. The ice on the wall also didn't continue to spread, and there was no sign of it melting either. At present, it seemed that a balance had been reached. The cellar was under the room, so the temperature in the cellar shouldn't drop any further. I felt a bit more at ease looking at the fire in the stove. I added some more coal. I also added some more firewood to the fire in the middle of the room. I mumbled to myself, no matter how cold it gets, it shouldn't be able to freeze the fire, right? As long as the fire doesn't go out, our family can survive. I guarded the stove, but I still felt cold, so I went back into the cellar again. I told my wife that the temperature had stabilized. My wife finally felt relieved. My wife and I said in unison, "We can survive like this." There was a pedal generator in the cellar, with the light on. It wasn't dark. There was also a thermometer hanging there, and the temperature was -20°C. It was cold, but with the warm clothes, at least we could still survive for now. I hugged my wife and our 2 children. We encouraged each other, but we were all dressed so thickly, like big balls, that we couldn't really hug properly. Holding hands was already a way for our family to be together. My wife and I were on the outside, and the 2 children were in the middle. The 2 dogs were also whining pitifully. I took out 2 big quilts and placed them around. The 2 big dogs got inside, and they were really frozen. We were really grateful to Black and Yellow, otherwise, we would have frozen to death in our sleep. My wife and I sighed. Just then, I wonder how many people had died. This rapid drop in temperature made me experience a scene just like in the movie The Day After Tomorrow. I had always thought those scenes in the movie were made up. Now I knew that the ground and the walls could really freeze rapidly before one's eyes. I guessed blindly that the temperature outside was at least -40 or -50°C. It turned out that humans could still survive in such low temperatures. I didn't know how things were going at the village committee. I hoped Lennox was okay. Our family had survived the first critical moment. As long as the temperature didn't drop any further, our family could live on. 14. My wife was holding the child in her arms and said plaintively, "With such a big disaster, what on earth are those so-called experts doing?" I said, "These so-called experts also have their uses." My wife asked in confusion, "Why, are we just raising these experts for nothing?" I explained, "If the experts publicly said that the end of the world was coming, do you know what the consequences would be?" My wife said casually, "What consequences?" "We would make preparations in advance and actively try to save ourselves." I said seriously, "You're wrong. Then we might not even live to see the disaster happen. We could be killed by the people around us." My wife didn't understand. "Why?" I asked rhetorically. "Has Lennox been wronged? Has he had to bear the pressure?" How many people have thanked Lennox? Today, there were still people who wanted to cause trouble for Lennox. This is just in one village. How many people are there in a city? If people knew in advance that the end of the world was coming, society would be in chaos. My wife wiped her tears gently with her trembling hand. Her voice was low and trembly. "A lot of people will definitely die this time." I hugged my wife and children tightly and said, "At least our whole family is still alive. That's enough." I looked at the temperature in the cellar again. It was Still minus 20 degrees Celsius, it seemed that the temperature outside had stabilized. I went out of the cellar again and checked the coal stove. The coal was burning well. The firewood on the ground had already burned out, although the room was still very cold. There were no more changes to the surroundings in the ground. The sudden drop in temperature seemed to have ended. I didn't have the courage to move too far away from the coal stove. After all, I had never experienced such extreme cold. Who knew what would happen if I opened the door of the house? It was good enough for our family to stay here like this. A voice came from the cellar. The child is hungry. Get something to eat. I was really in a dilemma. We had stored water, but it had frozen. The old man's joy well also seemed to be frozen. At least I didn't dare to go over there because the ground was covered in ice. I went back into the cellar, picked up a large iron bucket and placed it on the stove. The water in the iron bucket had all frozen. I just put it on the stove and started to heat it, but I wasn't in a hurry. After all, there were still several buckets of water. I could heat it slowly. After a rather long time, the ice in the bucket melted. Then I found an iron kettle and started to boil water. Although it was a bit slow, the water could still be boiled. I once thought that water couldn't be boiled at such a low temperature. I was being ignorant, thinking optimistically. I had learned something new. Water could be boiled even in extremely cold environments. I couldn't help but smile foolishly at the boiling water. Perhaps this was the feeling of surviving a disaster. Then I made self-heating rice and hot water for my wife, children, and Black and its wife. After eating and drinking, we could feel warmer. There was also a bit of warmth in the cellar. This period of time wasn't boring. I pedaled the pedal generator, and the light provided enough illumination. My wife and I didn't have much education at this moment. My wife picked up a book that she hadn't read for a long time and started playing games and telling stories with the child. It looked quite warm and cozy. Although it was a disaster, it was rare that we didn't have to worry about making a living for a few pennies. It was a kind of peaceful time in the midst of the apocalypse. I would also fiddle with the radio from time to time. There was still only the sound. This meant that the situation outside was still rather bad. At least the communication hadn't been restored yet, but I firmly believed that the country would come to rescue us, so I would adjust the radio many times a day to search for channels. Time passed neither quickly nor slowly. The two children gradually got used to the current environment and would occasionally take the initiative to come out of the cellar. The two children were in front of the coal stove, roasting sweet potatoes and warming their hands, enjoying the simple warmth. Children were always carefree. The tense emotions of these few days also began to relax. At night, I slept very soundly. 15. A voice came from the radio. ZZ, XX City, XX Road has built a number of locations. ZZ, Rescue Center, in some parts of the electric power and communication are gradually recovering. Believe tenacious of life. Pray for the miracle of life. Please hold on. ZZ, we never give up. Rescue team, ZZ. Full rescue operation has been carried out. Try to leave a message in the obvious place for the rescue team to search and rescue. My wife and I listened to this repeated recording over and over again. We hugged each other and cried. Finally, the day we had been waiting for had arrived. Finally, my wife and I used coal ash to write a big SOS in an open area. Finally, the rescue team arrived. We were taken to a snow-armored vehicle by the soldiers. You're safe now. I also saw many villagers in the vehicle, with expressions of joy on their faces after surviving the disaster. All the way, we were heading towards the relief center when we passed through the urban area. On both sides of the street, the originally prosperous shops and buildings were covered with thick ice and snow, looking dilapidated and silent. The windows of the buildings were broken, and the glass shards were swaying in the cold wind, making a sharp sound. The exposed steel bars and the broken walls and ruins looked even more desolate in the wind and snow. On the road, the thick snow almost covered everything. Occasionally, the frozen heads of people would be exposed, which was really shocking. Their faces were twisted, and their eyes were empty, as if telling the fear and despair of their lives before death. Their bodies were buried deep in the snow, leaving only a deathly silence. In some rooms, people who had been instantly frozen could also be seen. They maintained the postures they had at the moment of death. Some were curled up in the corner, some were lying on the ground, and some were still sitting on the sofa. There was fear and helplessness in their eyes, which made people unable to bear to look directly. My wife tightly covered the child's eyes. There were tears in her eyes, but she held them back. She was afraid that this cruel reality would scare the child. She nestled in my arms, and her body trembled involuntarily, as if looking for a little bit of security. I hugged her tightly, wanting to pass on my strength and courage to her, letting her know that no matter when, I would be by her side to protect her and the child. Don't be Afraid, don't be afraid, I whispered in her ear, our whole family is still alive. We were settled in the underground relief center. As soon as we entered, the lights were bright, and a warm atmosphere rushed towards us. It made me temporarily forget the extreme cold and horror outside. Our tense nerves relaxed a little bit. Just as we were feeling relieved, suddenly, a sharp cry came from a distance, breaking the short-lived tranquility. Then, the originally stable lights began to flicker. Going on and off, people began to panic and looked around, not knowing what to do. The sounds of footsteps, shouts, and collisions intertwined, forming a terrifying symphony of fear. I looked towards the distance in confusion and saw a group of people with strange appearances slowly approaching us. Their bodies were twisted, as if they were not in control of themselves, and their faces showed ferocious expressions. The people nearby began to run, trying to escape the pursuit of these monsters. However, some people couldn't avoid them and were suddenly knocked down by these monsters. Then, the spine-chilling sounds of biting and the desperate screams echoed all around. I realized in horror that these monsters were actually zombies. I looked around, searching for a way to escape, but there were only chaotic crowds and the roars of zombies all around. Just when I was in a state of panic, I suddenly found that my wife's eyes had turned blood red. Her body also began to twitch violently and uncontrollably, she suddenly pounced on me and bit my neck. I let out a terrified scream and tried to push her away, but I couldn't break free at all. The pain spread throughout my body. I watched helplessly as she turned into a zombie. Her eyes were like a stagnant pool of water, without any vitality, and became dull and empty. I struggled, trying to find a glimmer of hope for survival. But the surroundings had become a paradise for zombies, and the screams of humans could be heard one after another. In despair, the voice from the broadcast in the relief center came, Zazila, please don't come to XX City, XX Rescue Center, please stay away from here. Zazila, found here, be sure to stay away from this, I suddenly woke up from my dream, covered in cold sweat, and my heart was still beating rapidly. All around was silent, with only the cold wind howling outside. I gasped for breath, trying to calm down the fear in my heart. It turned out to be another nightmare. My wife and child were still sleeping soundly beside me. We were still in the old house, taking shelter from the extreme cold. The fear and pain in that dream were too real, as if I had just experienced a life-and-death disaster. 16. I couldn't fall asleep anymore. I stood up and carved the vertical lines that I recorded every day on the ground. At this moment, there were already dozens of these dense vertical lines on the ground. On this day, I found that the ice on the walls of the room began to melt, and the ice layer on the ground had also disappeared without a trace. The thick clothes felt a bit hot. Strangely enough, it was still very cold in the cellar. I don't know why. Does anyone know? Please give me some scientific explanation. Then, my wife, child, and the 2 dogs, black and yellow, moved back to live on the ground. After such a long time, I finally summoned up the courage to open the door for the first time. The world outside was covered in white snow. I fiddled with the radio again. There was still only the sound. We weren't in a hurry. The biggest crisis was the low temperature, and we had survived it for now. We didn't have to worry about food and drink. It was quite good to just stay like this. The children were carefree. The children in black and its wife were chasing and playing around in the house. However, the children were prohibited from going outside. We didn't know what the temperature was outside. The 52-degree Baijiu, Chinese liquor, that I threw outside these days had frozen. The 60-degree Baijiu hadn't frozen yet, although the temperature was very low. We didn't have to worry about being robbed. At this temperature, an ordinary person couldn't stay outside for long. If someone wanted to come out and rob, they probably wouldn't even reach the place before they froze into ice, even if there hadn't been the damage caused by the previous solar electromagnetic storm. Ordinary civilian things like solar panels, fuel generators, and cars couldn't withstand such extreme cold. Minus 30 degrees Celsius was already the limit for these civilian electrical appliances and equipment, not to mention the current extreme cold that could freeze 52-degree Baijiu. I had previously thought about clearing the snow in front of the door with a shovel, but when I just tapped the ground lightly with the shovel broke. My wife and I didn't plan to go out of the house either. We just tidied up the other closed rooms to expand our living space. The coal and firewood had also filled a whole room, which was enough to keep us warm. For a long time, my wife developed a new skill, growing vegetables. Only then did I realize that the nutrient soil my wife had prepared earlier came in handy. Although it was cold outside, the room was already very warm at present. My wife started growing vegetables on the heated Kong, and I studied making frozen pears and frozen apples. I can responsibly tell everyone that frozen pears are much more delicious than frozen apples. Everyone should give it a try if they have the chance. We didn't have to worry about food, and there was enough water. Even if the water wasn't enough, there was snow outside. The outside world was like the end of the world, but here I felt a kind of peaceful time in the apocalypse. We didn't have to worry about personal safety either, with this terrible weather outside. If there were really bad guys who could manage to come here, I would actually admire their courage. Moreover, I still had the homemade shotgun that Lennox had prepared for me in my hand. In my spare time, I would fiddle with the radio and try to get in touch with the outside world. There was no movement in the village at the foot of the mountain either. I wasn't curious. I understood the principle that curiosity killed the cat. However, I could see wisps of smoke rising from the village in the distance. Fire is the seed of human civilization. The presence of smoke meant that the people in the village were all still alive. And we weren't alone. It was still better to stay at home. Just wait quietly like this. Just as I was slowly enjoying this peaceful time and trying to forget that terrifying nightmare with its overly real fear and pain, a voice came from the radio. Zizizi, multiple rescue centers have been established on XX Road, XX City, Zizizi. The locations are the electricity and communication in some areas are gradually being restored. Believe in the tenacity of life. Pray for the miracle of life. Please hold on. We will never give up. Zizizi, the rescue team, Zizizi has fully launched the rescue operation. My wife burst into tears of joy and picked up the child who was playing. She said, "The rescue is coming. The rescue is coming." Then, there were bursts of firecracker sounds in the village, as if the villagers were shouting out their hope. Indiana, the surrounding villages, the sounds of firecrackers also went off one after another, conveying endless joy and hope. My wife murmured, "It's so good that everyone is still alive." "Everyone is alive?" the child asked in confusion. "Mom, is it the spring festival? Why is everyone setting off firecrackers?" My wife hugged the child and said, "The rescue team is coming. Husband, let's also go and set off firecrackers to celebrate." My wife's growing vegetables on the heated Kong also usher in the first wave of harvest. A cucumber. My wife is still working hard to research and try growing chives blanched in the dark and lettuce. I just haven't come back to my senses yet, and I think of that terrifying nightmare of entering the relief center again. It's so good to be alive.